Welcome to Warcraft Reloaded, a podcast brought to you by Mash Those Buttons, covering World of Warcraft Classic and its community. I am Bobby, also known as BlazzinBob, and today we are joined by Mel, aka Melarina. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good.
Good, you good. Well, we're sadly not joined by Ryan. Ryan came
Speak
down.
for yourself.
Ryan's not feeling very well, so we wish him a speedy recovery, and we're going to soldier on without him. But in his stead, we do have returning for a second week in a row, Ayle. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. Happy to be here.
We are happy
You
to
might
have
get
you
to talk this time because there's only three of us.
We'll see. We'll see. That's a. We're just gonna have to wait and see on that one. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try. All right. So this episode's gonna be. We're gonna go through housekeeping. Then we're gonna talk some news. There's some new patch notes. We're gonna go over those and some changes that they've highlighted, and then we're just gonna discuss the TBC raid testing that happened this last week. And we have a great guest on to talk about it. I did a little bit of carrot testing, but Ayle has done it all, so it's going to be a great talk. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we did have 3 new reviews this week, which is amazing, and it's going to be a little weird
4.
for people. 4?
Yeah, you didn't put the Australian one in there.
Oh, okay. Did you get
Sorry,
it all
keep going.
there? It looks like
Yeah,
you
I got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. Well, it's going to be a little weird this week because Mel's going to read them. So, Mel, why don't you take it away?
It's going to be better this week because Mel's going to read them. Okay.
Well, we'll be the judge of that because he does a pretty good job. You have to admit.
Okay, we'll see. There is a For the Alliance that I won't get good, but it's fine.
It's okay. I can throw that bumper in because I have it recorded and saved.
There we go.
I have only one other to compare it to, so.
All right. So our first 5-star review is from Mitza Cheezel. I like it. He said, 2 months in, love the podcast, fam. I've been listening for a couple of months now, and I look forward to each new release. Thanks for all you guys do. Cheezel. P.S. My girlfriend pointed out that Bob sounds identical to Bob from Bob's Burgers. H. John Benjamin.
That's the
best.
second review that states that. And it's funny because I was told before when I was on Watchpoint Radio that I sounded like the guy from Arthur. So when I looked up Bob's Big Burgers back when the review came in months ago, turns out it's the same guy. So maybe I am him.
I was
Who
wondering
knows?
if it was
Could be.
just biased because your name was Bob, but apparently not.
Yeah, you'll have to check out the live stream at twitch.tv/mash those buttons if you want to see if I'm actually him.
Yes. All right. The next one is from Servoress. Yep. That's how it's going to go. Awesome people making great content. As someone who is super passionate about Classic, I really appreciate others who feel the same. So it's always a pleasure to hear how enthusiastic you guys are. I absolutely love the show and will continue to recommend it to anyone and everyone. Keep up the great work.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
Savorhes, right?
Okay. This is why I don't get to read reviews usually. Okay. Next one we have is RKB123. Said relatable WoW Classic commentary. This is a great podcast that stays in the moment of the WoW Classic progression in a relatable manner. The hosts maintain a conversation going through the heads of semi-hardcore players like myself. The guests do provide nice insights about how to improve and prepare for the road ahead. Thank you and keep it up.
Thank you.
See, that's what you're here for, Ayle. Provide them
Very
that
nice.
insight.
Oh, I got plenty.
All right, and the last one is from Australia. We figured out how to check those reviews. So
From
this is
Down
from
Under.
Falconmic. And it says, great show. Awesome to see more high quality podcasts. I believe. is what it said. It gets kind of off. I had to like mess with the settings to read the entire thing because it said it was too long. But his review says, "Awesome show!" Exclamation point.
Awesome.
Well,
Oh, there
unique.
wasn't a For the Alliance one. See, I got this.
Thank you so much for the reviews. We appreciate that tremendously. All right, so I don't even know if we should do what we've been doing lately in WoW. I mean, like, because it's been just basically the beta, and we're going to talk about that later. I mean, I guess we've raided. I mean, we did another full clear nax in one night, which was nice, and but besides that, I mean, the guild has stopped doing anything but nax as far as the guild is, requires. But we did have a little fun alt ZG run that went off without a hitch. That went really well. It was a good time, but we'll get into what we've been really doing when we get into the TB stuff later. So with that said, let's move into the news. Okay, so this is a lot to unpack. Basically, there's a whole bunch of changes that just came through in a blue post. So I'll start off. We could just go through each one. Okay, so first off, attunements will function as they did when originally released. So we're talking the big long attunement quests. How do you guys feel about this?
I like it. Personally, it's something that adds additional progression to the start of the game, knowing that the first patch we're just going to have those 2 quick raids in the 10-man raid. I think having this long quest chain, sending people through dungeons and things, I think is great, and I'm really glad they're keeping it in.
Yeah, well, I'm just really glad I have the Attune add-on, because looking through that add-on, man, I would have had to made a spreadsheet to keep up with everything, and then I would have forgot to check something off at some point. And the Attune,
it's like a Path of Exile talent tree, right? It just goes off in every direction.
I know, dude, and it's nuts. But the great thing about this add-on is that if you have it with anybody else in your guild, it syncs up. It'll give, like, you can turn it off, but it's kind of like Nova world buffs, where when you complete an attunement, it says it in chat. I just know this because I finally got my lock attuned to Ani, and it said it, and then my guild made fun of me like I just wrote it. They didn't realize it was the add-on that wrote it. They're like, yeah, imagine in phase 6 you get attuned to Ani.
This sounds like an add-on of the week.
Oh, yeah, dude, it was. Yeah, it was. I mean,
it already was.
If you don't have it, you should get it, because the guild can, like, you could just look and see where everybody's at in the path that has the add-on. It's super sweet.
I'm sold. I'm getting it. Eden required from here on out.
Right. So what was the attunement process, though? Is it just getting reputation, or is there, I think you said there's a long quest line as well, and when did they change it? Because it says when it was originally released. Did they change it at some point?
Do you want to take this or me? You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure which patch it was changed, but starting out, for example, with Karazhan, you have to go do a few pre-quests near Karazhan, and then you have to run a bunch of dungeons. So Shadow Labs, Arcatraz, Steam Vaults, for example. You do those, then you have to do a Black Morass, and then you're able to get your Karazhan key. So it's a total of 4 dungeons, all on normal, so that isn't too bad for Karazhan specifically. I think Magtheridon as well has its... I'm not actually sure. Bob, do you know what the attunement for that is? There might not be attunement for that one. Gruul has one.
I don't actually know, but the Attune add-on will tell me, so I'm not super worried. But I do know about the Karazhan attunement. The one thing I'm worried about is that part that you have to do the escort quest inside the Caverns of Time, where the dude walks at a snail's pace, or maybe it's a girl that walks, but you follow someone through that area, and on PvP servers, it's going to be a nightmare.
Specifically white main. Let's be real.
Yeah, maybe not on. You're on. Wait, is it Scarum that you're on the Horde?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it might not be bad there if they don't fix the faction imbalance, but for us, it's gonna be hell. But there's a whole bunch of different things as quests. I believe both of them do have, like, you guys can write it and tell us as chat, just chat no maybe, but there's also, well, we're gonna get to that next though. But yeah, like it's good that they're doing it. It's gonna keep engagement, and then later on they just drop it. And as long as one person is attuned, they can open the door and everybody can zone in. But until that time, you can't zone in until you have the attunement. So that's the change that came later.
Got it.
And the attunements, they all kind of stack on each other too. So for example, to do tier 5, you actually need to kill Gruul as well as kill Nightbane and Karazhan, and combine an item from each to make the key to go into Serpentine Cavern. So the attunements in TBC, they kind of like stack on each other in that way. So you have to get attuned for Kara if you want to do T5, and then I think in tier 4 they remove all the attunements. So if you plan to raid before then, you should work on your attunements pretty much right away after hitting 70.
Wait, you said tier 4. You mean tier 6? They remove them all, right? Or is it tier 5?
Well, originally I believe it was patch 2.4, which I think was like T6, right?
Yeah, T6. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when they said they will remove at this point, just sometime later on. But yeah, at least early on, you'll have to move all the way through the chains.
Yep. So the next thing is the original quest lines will be required to enter each instant and purchase. This is written weird. And purchasing heroic dungeon keys will require revered reputation. So later on in the patches, they change it to where you can get into heroics with just having honored, which you can basically get by just doing all the quests in that one zone. But revered is a little bit harder, and dungeons don't give you reputation after honored. You have to do the level 70 version of that zone's dungeon to get to revered. So they're keeping it as it originally was, which I think is really good. But I mean, what do you guys think?
I agree. I mean, I think anything to get people to have to and want to play all the content, I think is good, because we know we're in a time of min-maxers where if they don't have to do these dungeons or they don't have to do this quest line, they're not going to do it. They're just going to go straight to the raid and pump it out as quickly as possible. And I think this is a good balance to help them keep people motivated longer in the first phase of release.
Yep, I agree. I think it's really great early on, especially getting people in dungeons. For people who've re-rolled, they learn to play their class and CC and do everything. The only thing that is maybe a negative about it that I've heard from some people is that it's not very alt friendly. So if you want to have a second character in the raiding, you have to do the whole chains again with them. And so some people don't really like that. But I mean, personally, I'm fine with it as well, because it gets those alts. Basically, make sure that dungeons are always running a lot at the start as well. Like there'll always be groups going, because people are going to be needing those to do raiding and everything else, just beyond farming gear, right? So
yeah, I guess it also makes the cap a little bit higher for alts to come, right? Because we've all been in that area where the main has everything, so everybody just wants to bring their undergeared alts to the raid, and at least we know they would have had to do X, Y, and Z and kind of know how to play their character before they come into a raid.
Well, here, let me put this to you from a different standpoint, because something I do see with this that's kind of a bummer is this. This was a design flaw, in my opinion, in the original TBC, is that the way it's set up is, I wish it was still revered, but I wish that the regular dungeons would give you rep to revered, because what this makes you want to do is it makes you want to grind the dungeons to honored, then do the quests in that zone, which the quest will continue to give you the higher amount of rep, making it much easier to get to Revered if you do it that way. And for people like us who really like to quest, it kind of says, well, that's the wrong way to do it. And of course you can play your game however you want, but it definitely incentivizes doing dungeons to Honored, then doing quests within that zone. What do you think of that?
I think it's going to incentivize min-maxing. So whatever, and it's not incentivizing it. It's just the player population that we have right now, right? I think anything you can say, this is going to result in this, which is not what it was originally designed for. And I don't think it's their goal now. But I think at some point we just have to accept that people are going to try to find the quickest way and the best and most efficient way to get to the end game. So whether you have dungeons that give you to Revered or you have to do quests, I think it's one or the other, and people are going to do whatever's most efficient.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards to how you'd I think want your player base to actually be out in the world first, especially because there's a lot of quests that lead into those dungeons. I have heard a lot about this as well, that people are going to run the dungeons first and do the quests after. So yeah, I do agree with you, Bob. It's kind of a flaw, I think, but I think it's just going to be there. So
And
and maybe it's their way of saving us on high pop PvP servers where they're like, okay, we won't make you do all the quests first. You can go to some of the dungeons and figure it out. And then as it kind of calms down in the world, you can go do your quests.
if I had to guess their original intent, they just didn't even see this coming. They just thought you'd do the dungeons 1 or 2 times while questing through the zone, and then the problem is that some of the level 70, dungeons in each zone are a complete, really a pain in the butt. And so you'll be forced to do that if you just do all the quests and don't do dungeons before to get to Honored. Whereas if you wait to do all the quests, you'll be able to almost get Revered, possibly without even having to run that level 70 version of the dungeon. And then you can just save that for heroics later. It's just the path of least resistance.
Couldn't they change it so that you could only get honored with quests, and then to get additional rep, you had to do dungeons? So you couldn't get any rep in dungeons until you were honored? Right, wouldn't that make it so that
you could just do either?
Have to do the quest first.
Well, I mean,
if you could
I
do
don't
either,
think they
people will just farm the dungeons. I mean, that's
people who want to, that enjoy that type of thing. But I think if you were to make it to where you could do either to Honored or either to Revered, people would get to level up as they want to. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe I want a quest, and I know I'm going to have to dungeon grind.
And that's kind of a bummer, right?
It's kind of bummer.
I think even if I could get to Revered in a dungeon, I'd still have to dungeon grind so that I could get to Revered quicker and get into the raid quicker. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's a perfect world. I think we have put that pressure on ourselves. I don't think that's Blizzard. If you want to do quests, you can do quests.
Yeah, it just makes your road a little bit harder later, and it also, the way you get money for quests after level 70, that also incentivizes waiting and doing the quests after you get a flying mount, because how easy are the quests once you have a flying mount? I mean, it's just so if you already have the capital to get an epic one, then you're just going to fly through quests like nobody's business. And so
that's
a
good point. Yeah, flying mounts make questing so much faster. You just rip.
Yeah.
Yep, I went and bought mine on the level 70 beta, copied the character over a couple times, and then I just flew all of Outland for 3 hours one night. It was glorious.
God, I have a newfound respect for people who do quests without questy. Because at the beginning of the beta, we didn't have questy because there was no add-ons. I cannot tell you how long it took me to figure out, and how inefficient it was, right? I'd go over here, and then I'd come back and I'd turn it in, and then I realized I have another quest over here, And then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, what I did when I was questing without you is I literally brought out a notepad, went through every quest, writing down the direction that it was, and then put them in the right spots so that they were clumped in the right areas. It was pretty efficient, but it took me a good amount of time each group of quests. So it was doable, but just not as efficient for sure.
Yeah, I had like a mini panic attack because I've actually never leveled as horde in the Outlands before. So I'd get a quest and I'm like, oh, I remember doing this, and I'm like, wait, it was the Alliance version, so it was like slightly different, right? And so like I would do the thing and then like I'd go back to town, but oh no, it turns out I had to turn in something here on the way, or just like I'm just like, oh man, it was just brutal. Like I just had
It
no
was.
idea.
And
Oh
I'm like,
man.
how do I know where I have to turn this in? I can't even see a question mark until I get close enough, and I'm just running around like
Lots
so
of
bad.
reading.
Yeah,
Oh
I
man.
know. You can expect us to read, people. Come on.
All right, so then they go on to say that the attunement requirements will relax as the game progresses through content. Uh, so entering Karazhan will initially require the attunement. Later on, it won't, but you'll still need someone to open the gate with the keys. And later on, dungeons will only require honored reputation, so that will be alt friendly at that point. So that is kind of nice, and that's how it played out in the original TBC.
And I think that's all we really want, right? I don't think okay, me personally am not going to be like hardcore on my alt until we're pretty comfortable in Karazhan, I think. But I know there are other people that like to play multiple characters, so I guess I shouldn't speak that way.
And then the next change is similar to how it was originally, because originally, like, just all the content through tier 5, I believe, was just open. You just had to complete the attunement processes. So the next change is you will be able to complete attunement processes prior to that raid coming out. So that'll be good for people that have time constraints. Like, if they're a casual that's just going to work on one character, they could still be working on Black Temple attunement during tier 4. So they can get that checked off and then not have to worry about it later, which I think is really good. But I wanted to get you guys' thoughts too.
Yeah, that's really important because the way that it worked originally in TBC is that you, like I said, you'd kill, for example, for Black Temple attunement, you'd have to kill both Vash and Kalthas, and they didn't drop the quest item for every player. They only dropped 2 to begin with, right? So it took basically 12 raids or 3 months to get everybody in your raid attuned. They later changed that, so it dropped more. I think like 4 to 6, and then I think even later on, yeah, for everybody. So the fact that they would have that beforehand is really good because then people will be able to go in there in the first week. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do that, right? And if it dropped and then everybody would have to farm the raid for 3 months before getting into Black Temple, that's just like that shouldn't work that way.
Yeah,
Basically.
and it'd be a lot of stress, everything. Like, so I think that's definitely a good change. It'll be weird to see how it all plays out, but I'm just excited that they are tiering the content, because I think it'd be even more stressful on casuals if it was just like it was in TBC when it came out. They were just like, here you go, see how fast you can go,
Yeah, they're kind of breaking it up for the community, which I think, like for me, I like it. It's good. There isn't going to be too much. As a fan, though, I kind of wish there was more because then you could watch that race. Would be really interesting as all the guilds raced for it. But knowing that my guild wants to do a lot of that content as well right at the beginning, the fact that like we can't go into T5 right away is good because then we don't have to like kill ourselves playing so much at the start to get everybody attuned right away, right?
Yeah. I think it equals the playing field a little bit for people that maybe don't have as much time as other people, that they can still be in guilds that are very competitive,
Well, and I think it's just really neat the way this is starting out so alt friendly, because there's a lot to do in TBC, even if you don't do doing all like arena is freaking fun. BGs are actually, the way I remember them, a lot more fun. But people will probably min max. We could have a whole discussion about having a separate queue for pre-mades and really think that should happen. But like it could be a really good time, and I think there's going to be a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of extra, even if you quest all the way to level 70, there's still a ton of quests you could still do. Like if you complete, there's still two and a half, maybe even 3 zones worth of quests you could do after that. I mean, the quest count in TBC is astronomical and really cool. And so there's just a lot to do, and I want to do it with multiple characters. And if it was open, if everything was open right at the start, there's just be no way that would be possible for me. All right. So it says original health and damage values will be used. This is for dungeons and raids. These as well as some mechanical changes. They'll be adjusting in future phases, so it sounds like they're gonna like nerf content as we go on. So raids should get harder in the older tiers. Is that what you guys are reading here too?
Easier, you mean, right?
Yeah. Sorry, thank you.
That's pretty much exactly it. And in the raid testing that I did this week, that I think we're going to talk more about later, for example, the bosses did have the original HP values. So for example, Gruul, he had 2 HP nerfs originally in TBC, so he had his full HP. Mag actually had twice as much HP as he was supposed to have. They did fix that in our testing, but it was the original value once they got it fixed, and it's a lot.
Cool. Yeah. I didn't get to do that, but I watched a bunch of them. So the next one, people were asking a lot about because they had already said world buffs were going to be purged upon entering a instance, whether it be dungeon or raid. So they said buffs acquired from creatures and quests across Outland, so like zone buffs and all of that, will be purged upon entering any instance. So we could strike that off. Like you're not going to be able to get the weird stuff and zone in. You're not going to be able to, enslave one of those demons and give the buff with a warlock. You're not going to be able to get any of that.
That's a really good change, because there was some sneaky ones there in Outland that people were already theory crafting about. There was a 300 spell power buff from Botanica that would make absolute crazy for casters. 30-minute cooldown, and like we just don't want to have that in the game, because if that'd just be awful. And with how often you're going to wipe in TBC compared to vanilla, having to go back and get those, if people were going to do that, would just be abysmal. So this is really glad they clarified this, because they didn't mention those other buffs in the original announcement. So the fact that they cleared that up is perfect.
Yeah, I'm super excited, because having to go get world buffs or other buffs again every week would have killed me.
Everybody's just so excited to be able to just go play. That's what they want to do. We just want to go play. We want to go play and die and have not a worry in the world, right?
Yeah,
right, and not
don't
let
get
it ruin
mad.
my night that I died and nobody else did, and now what am I doing? And you're not as effective as everybody else, and it just sucks. Like,
yeah, it's the worst. Like dying with world buffs, like halfway through, you're like, "Welp, I was doing really good. Now it's time to just be a Sunderbot." Like I just like, I'll make sure everything's sundered for you guys. Like it was horrible.
Yeah, I died with world buffs in a couple weeks ago in our first raid to stupid trash at the beginning. Then we rebuffed before Gothic. On Gothic, one of the Death Knights charges me and crits me like 3 times in a row, and I die, and I'm like, great, that was fun. I had world buffs for an entirety of 3 minutes this week.
Yeah, well, I got to keep him through Gothic, but then as I was tanking on the back on 4 horse, I did not get relieved. First off, the guy was going to try to relieve me 1 tick early. He's been doing that a lot. We've been trying to work with him to not do that. So he was called out by one of the other tanks to not come in and to wait 1 tick. But then 3 ticks later, he's still not in, and I'm like, ah. And then it was. Luckily, the majority of the raid did lose him, but then I did get to have him for SAF or KT, and so it's always a bummer. I'm glad these are gone. Good riddance, sayonara. Thanks for coming. Goodbye. So the next one's a little weird. So just to let everybody know, so warlocks in TBC, not at the beginning, but in later patches, could summon into dungeons. Like they could summon someone from outside into a dungeon. But they didn't have that at the start. So it looks like the devs have decided that ritual of summoning will not work inside of instances and Netherstorm. Now the Netherstorm one's new.
What's Netherstorm? Sorry, I'm really bad.
It's a place you need a flying mount to get to.
Oh, so they're just saying you can't summon somebody up there if they don't have a flying mount?
Yeah, it's one of the later areas. It'd be like the equivalent of a winter spring or a west or eastern plague lands in classic WoW. It'd be like the high level
forcing
area.
you to get a flying mount is basically what that is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, question though, has anybody else been in the beta and the summoning stones don't work?
Yeah, they haven't been working on the new raid realm. They were working, so I think they're probably going to have that fixed going forward. And the interesting thing actually about this patch note is it makes those kind of more valuable. And for like your guys' server, for example, which is very, war, putting the war in Warcraft on White Mane, there's going to be huge battles with those summoning stones. Like that is going to be a hotly contested area on PvP servers. So like it's kind of, if you're able to summon into dungeons, like you'd be able to skip all that, right? You'd be able to get people in there for free, wouldn't have to risk zoning out and dying a bunch of stuff. So we'll see. So I've been on some servers where there's been a bit of an armistice at the summoning stones sometimes, because people just want to get their people in and go out. But like I imagine that's going to be a hot gank spot.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
The Horde will own it. We'll just be so screwed. You're not making me excited here, Ayle.
I'm sorry.
Man. Well, yeah, and every time I tried to use it, I didn't try to use it on the level 70 realm, but I wonder, now that you say that, that's level 70. Have you tried it since hitting level 70 on the other realm? Because what it tells me every time is you don't meet the level requirement for this. I wonder if this is something they're going to save for level 70.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's a bug. It still doesn't work at 70, so I think it's something they just need to get fixed.
And if they're gonna not let you use the summoning stones until 70, then what's the point, right? You're not gonna go back and do whatever the 61 dungeon is at 70.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, Bob, you are playing a warlock in TBC, right?
Yes.
So you'll be able to just pop out of the portal and summon people just in front of the portal, as long as it's not in Netherstorm, right? So like, you can get around that if you have a warlock, but otherwise, it's going to be a free for all.
Yeah, that'll be kind of cool. I hadn't really thought about that part of it, but yeah, those are going to be highly contested. It's been the weirdest thing for me because we have been working up on the PvE realm, and it's just so weird to have a horde standing next to me and not be nervous at all. They're just right there. It's like, whatever.
It's very strange.
Yeah, I do think it's a really good thing that you can't summon to Netherstorm. It'd be like a hot spot to summon people so that they can skip getting their mount for a time. Everybody's going to want it eventually, but it'd be a way for them to skip it. It'd be a way to bring friends there to own the territory, whether you be Horde or Alliance, and was something else I was going to talk about on it, but I can't think of what it was.
It's I have another point to add. Like for raiding, for example, it's going to make it a little bit trickier as well because I think for teams who don't have as much flexibility and they're going to want people to respec during a raid. So say you're doing an end boss and you need more DPS and you only need one tank, you're going to want your tanks maybe to go out and respec to DPS, for example, or like less heals or something. It's going to make that more interesting as well because now you can't just summon them back. They can't just hearth respec and get summoned back right away. You're going to have to send a crew out to, help them get back and maybe even the whole raid if it's going to be, Ragnarok out there. So
I mean, but that could be fun without world buffs. I would have taken part in so much more like PvP prior to raiding. Like I'd probably be that guy that'd be like, Bob, come on, dude. Because sorry.
I mean, you are that guy always.
For different reasons, though. For different reasons.
True.
Oh man, but yeah.
yeah,
So
I think it could be fun, but it will be a bit of a nuisance too. I think if depending on how much you have to do that, right?
For sure.
yeah, you make a point I hadn't thought of because in Classic, your tanks are warriors and they're pretty much a budget Fury warrior if they change out some gear. Like they're definitely missing stuff, but they've got a lot of what Fury warriors have. They're basically pretty close to the same in the Fury tree. They're just missing the stuff from arms, so they can still do some pretty good DPS with the right gear on different fights that you don't need them. I guess I hadn't thought about that. What are they going to do when you just don't need them?
Yeah, people are saying that it actually makes feral druids better because they can go from tank to kitty, no problem, right? Their specs are very very similar, so it might add a little bit extra value for having a feral tank in your raid because they're able to swap between the two specs, well, without maybe just swapping off some gear and you're ready to go, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
crazy.
let's be honest though. If the meta becomes half like these 10 people have to respec for X, Y, and Z bosses, like that's gonna be a bummer as well.
yeah, it probably won't be that bad. It just that like I said, this is just where I see it potentially on like end bosses where like maybe you're struggling and you want to get a little extra edge to try to push you over. You might want to do that. Otherwise, I think at least with what we've seen so far, I don't think it would be necessary.
Yeah. I think you're more hardcore than us too.
Yeah,
That
maybe.
effort
Maybe.
level there to respec and then resummon outside the ends is really high for our guild.
Well, but I mean, at the same time,
Yeah.
50 gold in TBC is a lot different than 50 gold in Classic. It's going to be like, that's why I've kind of like given, not really worried about dual spec now because, like, if dual spec was in, it would really only help out the DPS classes that can't go anything else to be helpful for the raid because tanks would have a separate spec that was PvE and healers would have two separate they'd have DPS and healing and they'd swap those, whereas the people that gain from dual specs would be your rogues, your warlocks. Like these are the ones that aren't going to be pressured in many guilds to have two PvE specs, whereas casuals would be pressuring you. And it's just kind of, I'd always thought of it from the perspective of a rogue because that's what I was. So they never asked me to have two PvE specs. I just had one PvP and one PvE, and it was great in Wrath, But for other people,
Because
it
we
wasn't
didn't
the
know what we
same.
were doing.
I don't know why you say that. Like in
I'm just saying
Wrath, we knew what we were doing.
we didn't know to the extent that we would know today because the game is much older and there's been a lot more time to evaluate more efficient ways to do things, right?
True.
That wasn't the goal when we were playing originally. Like right now, there's a very different focus than there was before. You're, honed in on this, like, how can we do this quickly and most efficient and effectively? And that's just the name of the game now, which
Yeah, there's a
makes
lot
it kind of
more
exciting
emphasis
and
on quick,
different.
right?
Right. And it makes it kind of exciting and different, right? Because that's definitely not what anybody was doing in vanilla. Yeah, they might have tried to do things quickly, but quickly in those days was, multiple days, not 45 minutes.
Yeah, it was
Like,
a very different culture change for me starting and just being like, what do you mean I can't stand up? Like usually we talk for a little bit before we do the next part of the raid. Like it's when I stand up and go do something. Like but everybody's like, next. And I'm just whoa, okay. It was a very big
right.
change, but
Did
yeah.
you feel like you're riding in a convertible?
Well, I'm
Just
just
like your hair's blowing, like,
like
Whoa!
I'm just sitting there like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom, but I can't. Oh, it's just I mean, it's a very different experience from before because there'd be a lot of talking before each attempt because, and it was just a lot. It was just a lot slower. Everything was because like Mel said, so many people just didn't understand what was going on. So the raid leader was like walking them through step by step because they couldn't give a video prior, but we don't want to get into that.
Yeah, I guess it's also different though in my eyes because they're not 40-man raids anymore, right? 40-man raids are difficult to keep everybody happy and do things that maybe take time, like respec or do something like that. I think that's more difficult than potentially 25 or 10 man,
yeah, that kind of makes sense. There's with this like the 15 extra people, there's a lot more moving parts. At least already for us doing the raids on the on the TBC beta, it's felt a lot more easier to organize. Like in the classic raids, you'll have like for example, for Horsemen, you have like 8 tanks maybe at some point, right? And then you
Right.
have 10, 12 healers, and they're all like just coordinating that is a lot, and that's like almost halved in TBC, right? So it's definitely it feels good. There's something magical about the 40-man raids for sure, but from an
There it is.
organizational level, the 25-man is a good spot.
Yeah, you talk about 4 horse, and it's so different. Like Wrath, the 25-man version, you need 2 tanks. Like the back 2 don't require like an actual tank. They're just they stay there, and then the 2 tanks actually bring the bosses to the center, swap, and then take them back to the corners. And it's such a different game than having 8 tanks. Like we had to all of us DPS warriors had to learn, and some still don't know how to sunder and keep that stack going. Some still don't know how to disarm. Some still don't know how to blow what's the debuff with the little green guy?
No shout,
No.
demoralizing shout.
Yeah, Demo shout. And those are just like the few things you need to keep up. And then shield block. Like we've looked at the logs, you wouldn't believe. Like it's just bloodthirst, heroic strike, bloodthirst, heroic strike. It's just like it's so funny. But yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve because people didn't sign up for that. They signed up to DPS, and a DPS player has a much different mindset than a tank, in my opinion. But all right, well, we talked about that for a bit, so let's move on to. So okay, this was something you and I saw when we went to Karazhan. We talked about it in your stream a bit too, right before you came on the episode last week. But I was curious if badges of justice would be dropping from the bosses in Kara. And initially in TBC they did not. It was a catch-up mechanic that they added later. And so I was scared that they were going to drop in Kara because that would hurt the running heroics meta, and I really want to do those. It sounds like a lot of fun, and it's something that 5 people could do. But it looks like in the testing they were dropping. It was 1 from the first boss, then 2 from each after, right?
Yeah, they say in the announcement that they're not going to have that.
Yes. I was just kind of setting it up because we thought they were, because we saw it in the testing, but they have come out and clarified that They will not be dropping initially from the Karazhan raid, but they are going to put the Badge of Justice dailies in at the very beginning. And I believe those were not in at the very beginning of TBC. So that's kind of cool to have the dailies. And, the developers notice, like, we want to have, daily gameplay and encouraging. I mean, it's, it's what led retail to the daily grind of you must do your job. But I think the amount of, I think it's good when it's not too much, like dailies at least.
Yeah, I like it personally. It not having the badges in Karazhan and raid encounters at the start definitely gives extra value to those badges in heroics, which are going to get people in there. And heroics they can be pretty challenging at the start, especially. And with what we've seen from Kara, it wasn't overly challenging. So not having those free badges in at the start, I think, is going to make that gear have more value, right? So I think I also like the change of putting the dailies in. I think people running dungeons is good. Same thing as I said before. Dungeons, 5-man dungeons are a huge part of TBC, like much more so than they were in Classic. And to get people running them, keep people running them on a day-to-day basis, I think it's good, and it's optional. I mean, it's a great reward if you do it every day. That's an extra 14 badges, right? So it just kind of incentivizes players to keep running dungeons, get their keys, and get that sweet badge loot.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good. Like, I think Karazhan dropping them later on is good, because there is, like, I don't think a lot of people know this, but I've been just researching a ton of TBC, because I like you didn't do a lot of the PvE the first time, but apparently better badge gear comes out later that you can spend those on, and it's like a catch up mechanic for, like, I believe tier 6. So I mean, that will keep Kara relevant later on too, which will kind of be neat, and be neat for alts too.
Absolutely, it's really good in that regards, because the with Sunwell comes that additional badge vendor. Now the gear on it does cost quite a bit. It is more than the original ones, but it is equivalent to like tier 5-ish quality, and maybe some even a little better. So that's really good. With the removal of attunements at that point, it makes it so people who need to catch up can run those to get the gear. And also for your alts, if you want to kind of gear them up to bring them in, or maybe you need to sub in someone to replace someone who's quit or lost in your guild, it helps them catch up. So I'm okay with it. I like it. I think it's a good.
Or maybe also something that people might not think about is, in our guild, I don't know about yours, probably not Onslaught, but in our guild, we had many people re-roll come AQ time, and they decided to re-roll to something else. And especially with, from what I hear, tier 6 can be really good for melee. And, melee actually might not be as bad as everybody said it is, because we've been seeing a lot of testing going on, and it might not be as bad as everybody thinks. But I guess it gets really good in tier 6. So be a good catch-up mechanic for someone to change roles, because sometimes people just get tired of their main and they want to switch mid-expansion, and without that catch-up mechanic and, Karazhan and stuff dropping badges later, it would be a lot harder.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the Onslaught alt policy. Their alt policy was basically you play your alt as a main, or you don't play your alt at all, right? So you can have two mains, but they have to be the same standard. And that's as far as gameplay, enchants, everything. And if you didn't have it up to that standard, then you couldn't play it. So a lot of people just didn't play it. And that was actually really interesting that you mentioned that a lot of people re-rolled in AQ. I didn't realize that would happen. Like, how many people in your guild did that, would you say?
Oh, let's see here. Um, name like Skeet re-rolled. We had a warrior, or a shadow priest re-roll to a warrior. We had our guild leader re-roll from a hunter to a mage. We had
Probably like 5 or 6. I mean, honestly, we don't need to go through each one, but it wasn't that many. It was just like 5 or 6, and I think it was just a good time that we didn't need.
Well, because we were just pounded through BWL
Yeah.
and there was a lot of extra like warriors, it was hilarious because the warriors that did re-roll, it was a little upsetting because I'm sitting there going, well shit. 5 weeks after he re-rolled, he got all the gear cheap, and he's more geared than I am now. And I'm just like, But it was good for them because it made them happy, and they might have just quit if they didn't have that option. So I think the re-rolling thing is a really good thing, especially for casual type guilds.
For sure.
All right, so Primal Nether, Nether Vortex, and World Boss items from Doomwalker and Doomlord Kazzak will initially be bind on pickup as they were in the original Burning Crusade, and should be updated in a later phase. Now, I have no clue what this is talking about, because isn't Doomlord Kazzak back in Blasted Lands? Like, is that, am I missing the name wrong?
He originally was, but he actually moved to Outland, and he's a world boss in Outland now. So there's 2 new world bosses in Outland, similar to how like Kazzak was before. He's just called like Doom Lord Kazzak now, and he's actually in Hellfire Peninsula, up in the mountains north of Thrallmar. So yeah, originally it was BOP. They changed it later on to be BOE once the gear wasn't like that good for people to use, so you could kill the boss and like sell it or whatever. And so now it's BOP from the start, and it'll be BOE later. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I guess it's okay. Otherwise, like people would probably like I don't know, sell it. I guess, but I mean, people are still going to try to sell it. I think so.
Yeah, see, you on Onslaught probably killed a lot of world bosses. Mel and I killed world bosses in original vanilla. We didn't have a chance at world bosses on White Mage. The Horde and Alliance, certain guilds. I think your guild, Risen, might have actually been on that whole group, but they like worked it out between each other, and like there was no chance for Varg Flocka to ever kill a world boss.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be kind of the same here. It's the really hyper organized guilds are going to have people watching them, as long as the loot is good enough for them to want to kill them, right? And then after that, it won't be. So, yeah, I guess it's good, a good change maybe, but it makes it. Well, I don't know. Actually, it means you like as an average player and like in your guild, you won't ever have a chance of getting any of that loot unless you're actually there. So for the casual player, maybe like it's an avenue for upgrades that you just won't have the option to, right?
Yeah, dude, I just remember looking at that mace and just being like, man, that mace from what's his name?
Zach, Empyrean Demolisher, none
Yeah,
for you.
that improved haste by like what 20%, or it improved attack speed by like 20% for a certain amount of time, chance on hit. I just looked at that and was like, man, if I could have that, oh, it'd be amazing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm ever going to get a chance at these. I think that it doesn't really matter for me, but it matters for other people, I guess. And also, you have to think about just how much gold the guilds would get that are part of that coalition. Like how much gold they would get from selling that gear. I think that would be the thing about it. Staying bind on pickup.
The Primal Nether and the Nether Vortex change is big as well. And I was actually discussing with someone else, and we like disagreed about it. And I said I think it's good that it's BOP at the start, because if it's not BOP, then people are going to be rolling on it who don't need it just to sell it, right?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
their argument was is that it's better because there'll be an open market for it, so that you could buy it without having to do the dungeons. And I'm like, well, I think that's worse. I think people should have to run the dungeons to do it. And they're just like, well, it'll be cheaper because there'll be a free market. I'm like, well, I don't want to pay for it. I want to play for it. Right. So
I gotcha. Well, let me ask you this question. Was this friend a PvPer? Do they enjoy PvP more? Because PvPers would love it to be BOE, because then they wouldn't have to get in raids or dungeons. They could just buy their stuff for, making their different weapons and so forth.
Well, I plan to do a lot of PvP, and I'd rather just like tank the dungeon and get my stuff. So
Well, but I mean
they might have been.
that's because we're tanks. Me too. I would rather because I'm gonna put that shit on reserve. So like,
Yep,
but,
same.
but like a rogue might really want a rogue PvP or like there might be other classes that really would love it to be BOE, whereas us, I mean, we're gonna be able to reserve. So it's kind of like tank privilege there.
Yeah. So I might be biased. I don't know if he PvP'd all. He was Australian, so
Well, I definitely think it's good to have it that way at the start. If you want to change it later for a catch up mechanic, cool. Um, so then also, on that same note, Primal Nether and Vortex will become available from the Badge of Justice vendor in later phases, but not in the beginning. Now, this would be another way for PvPers to cheese getting them just by running heroics.
yeah, and I'm fine with that too. Later on, like as the gear kind of it isn't current tier, they can pick that up, right? So just kind of another catch up mechanic they had originally. I'm fine with that. I'm gonna get my stuff right away when it's at its maximum strength, and so I'm not really affected by it.
See, I almost feel like this one they could have changed and had the Badges of Justice vendor sell them just for a higher badge count, just to kind of help out those people that are the PvPers, because there's going to be a lot of them. I don't think people realize how many people are going to be PvP centric, because that's the way it was in TBC. There were people like you and me who just never messed with PvE at all. Mel and Mel too. It was just all PvP. It was what I had wanted from the original World of Warcraft when it came out. And then I was like, what do you mean I got to run a 40-man dungeon to be any good at PvP? What the hell is that? I was pretty pissed when I came to that realization, because I was like, this is Warcraft, not Kill Dragon Craft. This is Warcraft. So, but I mean, I think
Sometimes in War Bob, you have to kill dragons. Okay.
if the dragon's on the other side.
You think any of the dragons we've killed have been on our side?
Well, but they haven't been on the Horde side either.
Yes, it's something that we can unite on, right? Where everybody hates this faction.
But that was the only one that I thought maybe you could make. Definitely don't want them. I don't want them BOE. But if you could make it to where they could spend more badges earlier on just to get those, I wouldn't be completely, especially since the tanks like you and I are going to dominate those.
That might be a fair point. So maybe if you're like a Fury War and Arms Warrior, there's already been a little bit of this happening where people have been hinting towards a meta where they're like they don't want to have warriors or rogues. They kind of poo poo on the melee for TBC, and if those people are going to struggle to get into groups, this would be something good. But personally, I'm advocating against that. I think that melee will be a good melee, competent melee will be fine in TBC, but yeah, I do see your point, and I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's still play. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm okay with it, but don't want it to be too cheap. But so the Outland faction vendors will initially sell the items that they originally sold, and their stock will update as content unlocks. So an example would be the Swift Skyfire Diamond Gem recipe from the Consortium, and the mysterious ammo from Karazhan, and the PvP gear from all factions. What do you guys think about this?
I think it's good. Basically, the PvP gear in from the start would really change the first arena season. I know there's a lot of people who want that in because starting out, no one's going to have resilience and it's going to be very bursty. There's definitely going to be a lot of complaints about how, people are getting two shot and there's too much of this happening. Having that gear in earlier would allow it to be less bursty, but I kind of like early on having it a different meta where, it isn't super grindy, where it is, much different than it plays out later on. I think that has some charm to it, at least at the beginning. So I like the gear not being there. As for like the patterns and stuff, I kind of fall back to that's how it was originally, and I'm okay with that. The meta gem, it isn't that great, so I don't think many people are going to be using it anyways. So be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think where I sit with this is I think it's really cool to have stuff that come later in different phases. Like an example of classic, like the Titanic leggings. That was so exciting when that was coming out. And it was a world drop. You're waiting for the first person to get it. The first person that gets it is getting like 300 to 500 gold per craft, and it's just exciting for the whole server. I remember logging on and asking in guild, has anybody heard of anybody getting it? And you want to be the first to get it. And the people that waited were the smarter ones that paid a lot less. But either way, it was an exciting thing that came later in the game rather than just everything coming out. But those people that PvP that are upset with you, just remind them that they're at least not going to have to deal with resilience not affecting dots. So, because that wasn't the original TBC. It was only against things that crit, and warlocks and shadow priests and dot classes just dominated, even if you did have resilience. But it'll be cool for doing those BGs at the start, though. It will be cool doing that. Oh, sorry, Mel, go.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, I don't know. I hope that Blizzard, they're delaying a lot of things, right? Like they're trying to give us things in pieces and not all at once. And I think in theory, this is great. What I want to make sure is that they understand that the rate at which people are going to go through content in different areas will be much quicker than it was in the original TBC. And they need to release stuff quickly, or else you'll have these lulls of very annoyed people that want to get to the next level, right? I think it's fine that they're holding all this back, but I don't want them to hold it all back for too long, where we have that period of time in Classic where we were all grinding BWL for the 18,000th time and nobody was wanting to play. Everybody was raid logging and just annoyed at life, right? I think there's a sweet spot there that they need to get to, right? Where it's not too fast that some more casual people can still enjoy the game, but it's not too slow that you're going to lose all your people that enjoy playing the game all the time because there's no reason to play the game anymore.
Well, okay, so let me throw this at you. So one item that they didn't do this with and one item that they did. So the onslaught girdle was not an item when vanilla released. It was something that was released later, to entice you to go to Molten Core and do older content. Same with the Bone Reaver's Edge sword, the two-handed sword from Rag. Now, these are like the onslaught girdle I'm still wearing in Nax Phase 6. It was the best item in the game right off the bat. Now, the Titanic leggings would have been the best item until you got to Nax. And if the Titanic leggings came out prior to, came out Phase 1, I mean, you just get that item and it'd just be your item for the rest of time, So I don't think having these bigger items in vendors is going to be a good thing or healthy, because you're just going to complete the game quicker than you need to.
No, and I agree with that. I don't think that this in itself is a bad change. I just want to make sure that they're, I don't know, catering their phases towards the population that we are now, as opposed to the population we were. And we've seen it a little bit. I mean, the classic phases went quicker than they had in vanilla, but a lot of us would say not quick enough.
Do you have any thoughts, Ayle?
Yeah, I mean, I think your server was a bit different as well. Like AQ took longer to come out because the gates weren't open right away. Is that what happened?
Oh yeah, I
Ugh.
mean AQ. Yeah, we were the biggest server, but I mean we didn't open it last by any means. But it was 2 weeks later that we thought it was going to be open. We thought it was going to be open day one, and instead
It could
it
have been
was two
open day
weeks later.
one.
Well,
It
I
was, it was
mean that's actually maybe we should clear up that rumor right on the podcast because Yip did say that it was Risen who did that, but Ayle is in Risen on White Man, and I was in his chat, and one of the members called me out when I said that. I said, "Well, I should have stated that's what I heard." So, do you want to actually tell what happened, Ayle?
do you remember it more specifically? I remember there was some misinformation. They said they heard that other people had some mats, and then they didn't end up having them. And then
Yeah,
like Risen did have a bunch.
we had heard that Risen was just going to take care of it for us, like, and we didn't have to worry about it at all. And then supposedly Risen just didn't.
Well, no, we had heard that Risen said, no, we want a couple more people to get.
That's what we heard after, supposedly. This is all from Yip. Mel and I didn't hear this, but he heard that prior Risen said they were going to open the gates day one, and then rolled back and said, "No, we want to get more mounts."
Ooh, I'm trying to remember what my friend said in the chat that day. Because it was something like they thought somebody else was going to contribute a large portion of mats, one of the Chinese guilds, and then they didn't, so that it worked out that there wasn't enough to actually open it. They actually didn't do it at all, so they didn't have those mats. They had turned in a bunch. They were counting on some other people to turn in mats. They didn't do it, and then it ended up being short.
So it
Yes.
wasn't just so you guys could get more mounts.
As far as I know, no, I don't even think they got that many mounts. To be honest, I can double check on that, but as far as I know, they only have I think two. So
Well, if anybody in Risen wants to write out the story and send it to wcrpodcast@gmail.com, we will clear the record up once and for all here on Warcraft Reloaded. So please send us the story. We would love to hear it because it's just a neat story. There's neat story. All right, so the next one is huge. It's what I asked for way back on episode, I believe, 24. Willie was on. We talked about some changes and changes we would love to see. Ring enchants and jewel crafting specific gems now have a profession requirement to benefit from them. So if you have your rings enchanted and you drop enchanting, that goes gray. It no longer works. It's like a slot bonus that you didn't hit. And I think this is amazing. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, they had to do this, or else the min-max community that we are now would work up enchanting every time you got a new ring. And that's just not the way to play the game.
yeah, I think the really hardcore min maxers are upset by this because they want to be able to have every advantage they can get, right? So if they're going to do this and other people won't, that'll give them a small advantage. They want to be able to use that. Personally, I wasn't going to do it. It's too excessive. Like I don't care. Like if I'm enchanting, I'll have them. If I'm not, then I'm not going to do it. And
Right.
I think it's good. It would kind of like if they had it in, it would kind of like it would motivate like kind of unhealthy like profession gameplays like that, right? Where it's just
Yeah.
like that just sounds awful to do, but
Right. I guess on the other hand, do you guys think that this makes enchanting or jewel crafting a necessary skill for people that maybe it shouldn't be, right? Like I get that you get something from it and it's helpful, but do you think there will be guilds now that will require people to be enchanting or jewel crafting so that they have these things?
Not unless they've changed drums. Drums will still be the requirement. Like if drums was changed a little bit, you might have some wiggle room. But if drums stays the way that they've changed it to, I don't think so. But what do you think, Hale?
That's tough to say. Definitely drums. People are going to be required to have. As for like the rings and stuff, I don't know. I think the really try hard people will have that. Like for
But I mean,
example, like
they're
Deli and stuff. Like he's going to do that because he wants to be maximum power. Like that's how he evens the playing field. Is that he has everything he can get, right?
but is he going to do it on his mage though? Because he's going to want to have drums and tailoring at least at the start. Like to have the gear in tier 4.
Yeah, I think that's actually good that you can't have it all, right? So he's gonna have to pick, and at least early on, I think tailoring is much better. So he's gonna have to live without those ring enchants, right? And that's the same
Yeah.
with everybody else, and that's how it should be. You shouldn't be able to have it
That's
all.
yeah, I agree. That's the good thing about it, right? Is that there are multiple professions that have good things and you have to choose. You can't just work overtime and get both.
I just wish the drums were a little more in line with with personal gain rather than group gain, because your 12 spell power on each ring isn't doing anything for your group. You know what I mean? So that's what pushes drums over jewel crafting and enchanting, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're still not sure what they're going to do with those completely though. So
Maybe.
I hold out hope.
Well, I hope
I am
I hope
hopeless.
you're right, but I don't have hope. Now, does anybody have anything else to add to that at the end? I'm just happy about it because I did not want to have to work up enchanting and jewel crafting constantly.
Same.
Yeah. Agreed.
Although, on the other side, it might have helped people sell low level mats quite often because the min maxers were doing it. So, you could look at it from that side.
Yeah, people were saying that there might have been some people who already had built up a bunch of those mats while they were cheap in Classic, and like those are the people who are going to be like the most affected by this right now.
Yeah, I mean that is a good call, but I'm sorry. I'm excited about it. I'm sorry for you guys that did do that. All right, so the next one is kind of a big one, and a lot of people are pretty pissed. So, there were a lot of weapons in the start of TBC that were main hand only, and they changed to one hand towards the very end of TBC. So everybody was kind of expecting them to be one hand going into TBC. Like, for instance, what's the mace that everybody wants?
Drake Fist Hammer.
Yeah, and so they could rock two of those in phase 4, phase, like you could upgrade the weapon for listeners that don't know, these weapons in blacksmithing like have multiple levels, like they power up like Goku, and so having two of them is huge. But like now it's going to be you could only have one, and there's a lot of people that were making their choices on what class they were going to play in enhanced chamois, rogues, and stuff like that, and now that's no longer going to be a thing. And there's a lot of offhands they could have used that are also main hands. So it really kind of makes the offhand pool a lot smaller. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I was really pissed about it because I had literally just crafted the second one on the beta an hour before they fixed it or they changed it. And I had spent 2 days farming the mats because it is pretty significant. You need like 20 primal fire, 20 primal earth. And like I'm doing this and I'm already thinking like, I'm an idiot. This is going away and I don't know when. Why am I doing this? This is the dumbest thing ever. I made my first one like 2 weeks ago as soon as I could. And the second one, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do it because it's going to be a lot of work. And like the whole time I just, I have these doubts in my mind and I literally make it. The servers go down an hour later. I didn't even get to do a dungeon with it.
Oh no.
I log back on and it's in my bag and I'm like, what the hell? So like after like I was kind of butthurt for a bit, and there was actually another streamer, Oro. He was so mad he deleted both of them.
That was
He's like-
just about to his clip is in the Wowhead article that'll be linked in the show notes, and he didn't even say anything. He didn't rage. He just closed down the web browser, stared at the camera for a second, pulled it out, delete, pulled the other one over, delete, logged out, and then like ended. Like he was so mad, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of farming.
Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, I think we have to appreciate the fact that that is a very min-max move that they were not originally intended to be, right?
Yeah, it was brought in as a catch-up mechanic later on so that people could catch up and have two of them, and have multiple options at both offhand and main hand.
Right. When the new gear was way better and you needed something different. So I get that, but I do think that them not having it in helps make a lot of other gear relevant. Not a lot, but other offhands,
And I agree. After I had kind of like finished my hissy fit about this, I realized that this is probably actually good change, because we actually had discussed this earlier in the guild for like early on. A lot of the weapons from Malchezaar and stuff, like people aren't going to want to like get them, right? Literally everybody in our guild who could be a blacksmith, all the melee, we're going to be a blacksmith, right? So we're saying like, oh, like who's going to get the cool like two-hander and stuff? Like no one's going to want that. They're all going to have the blacksmithing weapons. Well, now because of this change already, some people are reconsidering like, well, do I really need to be blacksmithing just for one weapon? Maybe I'll just end up doing something else. So I think it does kind of add a lot more interesting choices to melee, because right now, before this, you just make both and you'd be done, right? And now now you actually have like, I don't know what offhand I'm going to get right now, even still. Like I have to go do some research. So it's from that point of view, I am kind of interested in it. It also makes the raid items, have more value, where it was kind of the same thing before. So like I think like Kel'Thas has a really nice one-hand weapon and things like that, or like Spike Blade or things that, it's going to make it so people are going to want those items. Or before, like it was kind of like, well, that stuff people aren't gonna really want it. So it's kind of sad. But now it makes it so that there's actually more value in finding your offhands for those melee classes. And I think it's a good change. A lot of people are really upset by it because they just want to, craft their bits and be done. But
don't we all, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could see why, there is a lot of main hands that are main hands, and so I could see it does like kind of like weaken the pool of offhand weapons, so
but it also, how often do you just hate seeing things disenchanted in raid? You're like, we got all the way here, we put in all the work, and we got 3 items that are crap, and I feel like you would just have that more often if you're going to change them all to just one hands and not main hand versus offhand, then you're just making sure that people are pissed off every time one of these X items drops.
There's also one thing to be said about how cool it looks to have two weapons that look the same. I remember it was the second raid in Wrath of the Lich King. Oh, I'm blanking. Ulduar. I got the two golden gladiator looking blades on my rogue, and it looked so cool because they looked almost identical, and it was just like I felt like Russell Crowe in the Gladiator. And it's just, there's something to be said about weapons that like go together good, so
the swords, right?
Yeah, it was so sweet.
Cool.
So
I remember same thing. When I played TBC originally, I had a warrior, and I crafted both of them. I remember one, it was like the daddy, and the other one was the baby, because I had upgraded one, but not the other one. The one was like slightly bigger and more fiery than the second one.
Nice.
And so like that one was always in the main hand, right?
Yeah, that's good. Well, the two-handed people are still going to be happy with blacksmithing. So I actually think it's a good change, but I get why people are mad, especially, just, if they made their choice on having those two weapons at the start, they were bound and determined to show melee was awesome, and now they're going to have a tougher time. But hey, challenge is out there, Yep. So So the epic engineering goggles will become available to traders with the tier 5 phase. Now, people were wondering if these were going to come in. These are, these are really good. If they were in at the start, they would be BIS, and it would be, something where you might just think to work up enchanting because you hadn't got a good luck on a head drop. So what do you guys think of this? Like, it's basically coming in the same time it did in the original.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's fine.
it's coming in a little bit before actually, because I think
Is
they
it?
originally came in with Black Temple, where they're coming in with SSC now, right?
Mm.
Well, is it Black Temple tier 5 or am I crazy?
Black Temple's tier 6.
Oh,
Tier 5 is Serpent Shrine Cavern and the Eye, right? The Tempest Keep.
Oh,
okay.
yeah,
See,
yeah.
I thought Sunwell was tier 6 and that was it. Or the am I saying that right? Is Sunwell
Well,
the
it,
5-man or is that the raid?
Sunwell's the raid. There is so tier 6 does drop from Sunwell as well, right? But the first 5 pieces drop in Black Temple, but they are like separate. Even though they drop the same tier loot, they are separate kind of like tiers of difficulty, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
effectively, Sunwell for difficulty is like the 4th raid, still drops some tier 6. The other pieces are elevated over Black Temple, right? But the tier set's the same. So it's kind of they've never really done anything like that since, I think. But it's yeah. So yeah, I personally like it because I agree. If it was in early, I think everybody would go engineering because they're just strictly better than what's out there. But having it come in with
Right.
tier 5 where they're closer in power, I think is good. It'll give people who don't have a good helm yet the option to do that, to pick those up. And then everybody else who does already have it, it's not required. And for a warrior, I think it's actually, I'm probably going to stick with engineering now because I'm going to get one helm for my main spec. And then this is going to allow me to get a really good off spec helm, for just the cost of the materials, right? Which would be kind of hard to get just in the raid normally because, I'm going to be at the end of the line for it. I'm not going to have one by that point. So,
Right. I think for me, they've kind of jumped around the issue of drums, right? It sounds like they're making sure that every other profession is not a requirement. They did the things to the jewel crafting, they did this to engineering, where it's not like you're going to have to go engineering and spam that up. Enchanting, you have to be an enchanter. The only profession that they haven't completely fixed is drums and leatherworking, right? Like, why?
Yeah, drums are
This
still great. They're just more of a pain in the ass
Right. So
until tier, was it 6 that is it tier 5 that the big drums come out?
so this is either maybe, yeah, but this is either one of two things, right? Where they are either one, trying to make leatherworking less enticing because of these restrictions on other professions, right? So you can't have jewel crafting or enchanting enchants if you're not that profession. So leatherworking is maybe less enticing that way. Or they're just haven't figured out the exact thing that they want to do with leatherworking yet. So they haven't released that yet, which I'm hoping that's the case. But
I think they don't realize how like degenerate the community is with leatherworking because the first thing that anybody said when they did that was great. Now it's still mostly required, and now it's really annoying to do, right?
right.
Yep.
You made it worse. You actually just made it worse.
I will say the drum sound is really neat. I heard it for the first time the other day, and it was actually really neat. Someone asked, like, "What's that sound?" I was like, "It's drums." It's like boom, 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 or something like
Yeah, it sounds like drums.
that. That is really good sound. But okay, so Harris, Pilton, Zephyr.
Can we just pause right there, right, real fast? I just want to give a shout out to how funny this is.
What?
I forgot about Harris Pilton and like the meme of Harris Pilton.
Oh wow, really?
Like, come on.
I mean, she got famous for legit reasons. I don't know why you would forget about her. I mean, she's just not forgettable, right?
Oh my god.
Shit, huh?
Oh,
I mean,
man.
whoever did that was, they were cracking up when they put that in. They're like, this is
Do
gonna
you
be great.
remember the show with
It's
Paris
Paris
Hilton?
Hilton.
Yeah, do you remember the show where she did it with her Christina Ricci, and she went to Walmart for the first time, and she was like, "This is the most glorious place on earth. I could get anything." Oh my gosh. I don't know if anybody remembers that show, but we're going to move on before. So Harris Pilton, Zephyr, and the cooking and fishing dailies will be available at the beginning, as they do not directly or largely impact player power. Now, I mean, they give money. I mean, they do affect that type of player power, and there's a whole lot of stuff you have to buy, especially if you're cloth initially. So I think they're wrong in saying it doesn't affect player power, but I'm kind of happy that they're in, because I've worked up fishing on a bunch of characters.
I don't think it affects player power in the way that I think it empowers players. I don't think it affects their power just because they have more money. I think that it's a good thing, and I think it's the only way that they are going to actually get to discourage bots, right? Like, if people can make their own money and make it easily, bots are less effective. That's just my
People
opinion.
actually have fishing.
I've worked it up on 2 characters now. Yeah,
It's such a pain in the butt.
It's been a bitch, dude. It's been a major bitch. But if you watch Netflix and you turn up your sound really high, and you stay in a space where you're not going to get any other sounds besides that, then it's not too shabby.
I think it's the only thing I've never done in the game. I've tried to level it up. The benefits of how good it is. I've tried. It's just I do it for like 20 minutes and I just can't.
Well, I'll
It's
let
like
you know.
real life fishing, right? It's just not as exciting once you get there. You think you're gonna like be able to reel things in all the time, and all of a sudden you're just sitting there.
I like real life fishing way more than WoW fishing. WoW fishing is dreadful.
Well, see, I'm not sure exactly, but it does get easier to work up either in TBC or Wrath, because I first worked it up in Wrath, and it was super easy and definitely worth it to do the dailies. I don't remember if they made that change in TBC. So if they do, it'll be easier to get it worked up. But it is definitely, like, I've made a good amount of money on the 2 characters I've worked it up on.
Okay. I
There's
worked it up on. Go ahead, Ayle.
You go first. Mine. I'll touch on something after.
Okay, no, I worked it up on my character, and I worked it up because I wanted to stop buying Nightfin snappers because they were so expensive. So I worked it up, and then literally the effort level to go out and fish Nightfin snappers was way too high. So I just ended up buying them anyways. So there really was no reason for me to work it up. It has not saved me any money, and I do not go out and fish. So,
but hey, there's Mr. Pinchy in TBC, right?
Yeah. I
mean,
yeah. That I was just preparing.
Well, yeah. Then there's the fishing challenge too.
Great. Yeah, fishing is great for farming primal water in TBC. So a guy actually in the beta gave me a ton of those because he was just fishing. Just I don't know why, and he had so much primal water. He just gave them to me, and he's like, "Yeah, it's just fantastic." In Nagrand, primal water you get like one like every 10 things. So apparently, if you need waters, that's what you should do. Right. And like as for Harris Hilton, I think it is a good gold sink because the bags, the reason that she's in there, she has the bags, right? She sells the really good 22 slot bags, 1,200 gold. Good gold sink. There's a lot of, funny money floating around out there. Those bags are going to sell. Kind of funny.
Funny money.
The whole thing of her being in is just kind of like, I can't wait till people like see her and be like, wait, who is this?
I know,
right?
Like, right? We all know who Harris Pilton is. There's people coming into TBC that are like, don't even realize this is a meme.
No.
One of the it's funny. One of the first memes, right?
It's one of like the first things that has like made me realize just like damn, this game is that old, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's another thing. The 22 slot bags does affect power. Like the power to not have to leave as quickly when farming is big. Like bag slots
That's
are
not power.
power.
That is quality of life. Okay. Like if I have to say one more time my bags are full and I have to figure out what I need to throw away, I'm gonna lose my shit. Okay.
Well, okay, so just a tip for anybody going into TBC, just remember while you're doing quests, because if you like to quest like Mel and I, there's going to be a lot of things that you do need to sell. Mail them to your alt. It is so efficient, it's not even funny. Just mail them to your alt, keep questing, and yeah, that's my tip. But sorry, Ayle, you were going to say?
No, sorry, that was a burp.
Oh, well, you can do that
You're
too.
saying mail them to your alt like you don't have, if you're at a place where you can mail, you're at a place where you can sell. I just don't
Yeah, but
understand.
there's a ton of things you're going to want to sell on the auction house, not sell.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I just meant vendor. Like most of the stuff that I need to sell is just vendor stuff.
Well,
It
it's
just
not
fills
though.
up my bags with like
Yeah, you just don't know.
little.
There's a lot of the white items that are used for a lot of stuff. Like once we have our add-on, that once we have TSM and it's telling us this goes on the auction house, you're gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna vendor that. You're gonna want to be able to send those to your alts, so you don't have to keep going back and putting them on the auction house. It's extremely efficient way to quest.
Yeah, it's actually really cool is that all the meats in Outland turn into foods that are really useful. So that's something
Um,
that's like more
I have
important
cooking
because
too.
perfect. There you go. And like so like in classic, like there's only a couple foods that are really useful, right? Like there's the dumplings and knife and soup, right? So there's like two, but in TBC, like pretty much all of them are because they spread it out in such a way that there's now spell power food, there's hit food, there's strength food, there's attack power food, stamina, the whole thing. So like that's a big one that people vendor that you should really hang on to is the meats and stuff because those will sell and they are pretty valuable.
I will say there's been something freeing about being in beta where I can just like delete things and not have to worry.
Super freeing. Yes, I'm just like, well, I'm gonna sell that because I'm just selling moats. I don't care. Like I'm just selling everything.
Right. Whatever.
I need those moats. Don't do it.
Well, I mean,
No,
I guess I could put them on the neutral auction house for you.
it's like when I upgraded away from Onslaught Girdle, I'm like, man, should I give this a funeral? Like we've been together for so long. Like it's toddler age at this point, right? Like
Yeah, that was me with my benediction staff. I was like, you're so bad now, but I've had you for so long. I
Dude,
just feel like
we've only seen that
is this
one
how we say
upgrade.
goodbye?
We've only seen that belt drop twice. The one upgrade to Onslaught, we've only seen drop twice. And what's funny is the two people that got it didn't have Onslaught because the people with Onslaught are like, well, I'm not going to bid a bunch of DKP on just that slight upgrade,
Right.
one thing to note, which I know this is off topic because I do that, but so we talked about a couple weeks ago that I was going to farm AV to get revered or exalted or whatever I needed to get the offhand in AV because I got the mace from KT. So I did that. And then the other mate or the other offhand dropped off of, gosh, I forget who it is. Not the best offhand, but the other offhand that was better than the
drops
AV
off
one.
of, what is it? Is not Hag of the Unclean, but right before that.
No, it's the
Noth,
mind control, like
There's a
Noth.
lantern.
Yeah,
the
it's from
Noth
Noth,
mace,
right?
I think. Yeah. Or the Noth offhand. And I used the AV grinding mace for half a raid, and it was really sad because I hate AV and I didn't want to do it.
Unfortunate.
To be fair, we only had to do like 3K worth of grinding, so it wasn't that bad. And it was AEV's back to like rush meta, so the Horde and the Alliance are just seeing who could do it faster, and you really don't have a lot of people turtling, so it was pretty easy, to be honest.
wasn't.
It was still kind of a bummer, though. Yeah, definitely. All right, so the last little piece here is Landro Longshot will not offer the WoW trading card game code redemptions. Now, this was back, for anybody that doesn't know, there was a trading card game for World of Warcraft that sometimes when you open packs, you could get different items. Like, everybody knows about the spectral tiger mount, but there was a bunch of different things besides just that. It went through TBC and Wrath, and I don't know if it went past that. I don't remember, but there was a lot of different things. Like, for instance, I had a card where I got this item that had 250 charges, and when I used it for 15 minutes, every footstep that I would make would be green fire coming off of my footsteps as I ran. I mean, it was a real fun thing to do during raid, just to, mess around with other people. But there's a bunch of different things. And so they're basically turning that off. They don't want people to use duplicate codes of cards that they had before and already used, because they're on a new database, so it wouldn't know that they'd used it before. It would give them the stuff. They also don't want to change it to where it syncs, to where people will have to choose between classic or retail to do this. So they're just turning it off. Now, I don't know if you've heard this from me or not, Ayle, but I've been asking for months to just make these things that you can get huge gold sinks where you can buy all these different things for gold in game. Like, we're talking the spectral tiger mount, 100K or something like that, something astronomical, and then the other stuff, smaller. But I guess they're going to do something with this later. They say they're going to repurpose it, but how do you feel about this?
I feel like that's kind of ominous. I'm concerned about how they're going to repurpose it later. Like, I don't know, but it's weird that they would kind of mention that, because it's kind of like warming us up to something. Hopefully I mean, I think you have a great idea there. I haven't heard that before, but I think that would be amazing. It'd be a great gold sink. I would like it to be a lot. I would like them to clean up the gold, the bots first before they do that. Otherwise, that would be like a really good buying incentive, right? So clean that up and then put in a gold sink, I think is a fantastic idea. As for them not allowing the old codes to go in, I think that's totally fine. I would like to see the mounts in somehow, but just having people redeem codes either here or on retail, that is kind of weird, because there is the two places, right? Like, it does seem kind of iffy, especially with the fact that this partnership was with Upper Deck, like a totally different company before with those cards. So I don't know how that would work legally. Maybe that is an issue they're in right now as well. So I'm okay with this now, point. But I am concerned later on down the road. Well, what are they going to add here? Hopefully it isn't shop or something, but more towards your idea, I would prefer.
Well, Yip had kind of a really cool idea to link games. I think he said it last week. Was it last week? He said that there was rumors. I don't know if it was his idea, but he said there was rumors, or maybe it was his idea. I don't remember. I don't want to misquote him, but he said, why not, have the Hearthstone decks drop these cards, where you can get it in Hearthstone and then unlock it in Classic.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, it'd get the two games going together. They've done a lot of different cross things like that. But I do wonder, now that you state that about legal reasons, I wonder if they just can't use, or if there's something contractually that those items are actually their, intellectual property is owned by Upper Deck or something like that.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
That's an interesting thought I had not considered. But that's going to bring us to the end of that. There is one little piece of news before we are done with this. Actually, I don't even know if I should talk about it. Basically, Datamining is hinting at achievement, achievements being logged. So Achievements come in pre-patch in Wrath of the Lich King, the pre-patch from TBC to Wrath, and it looks like they're starting to accumulate the data for previously unlocked achievements now, which could point to they're just getting ready for Wrath, or could point to achievements coming in TBC.
Listen, I feel like there's enough that they need to do with TBC that if they're getting ready for Wrath already, like we've already lost the game, guys. Come on. But I don't know. I think achievements would help because it gives people something else to work for.
I've never gotten your opinion on this. What do you think about achievements?
Not till Wrath. That's it.
I mean, I don't even know that. Like, I liked them, but at the same time, they brought on such toxic behavior with item score, link, achievement. We've talked about it on the show before, but not with you. But it's just like, if you have to link the achievement, how do you ever get it done if the pugs are making you link achievement?
Yeah, it definitely affects gameplays in weird ways. I don't think they really ever intended. Honestly, I want them to keep it out of TBC and Classic because it just wasn't there to begin with, right? Like, could you imagine
Yeah.
not being able to go do a dungeon because there's like link your Baron Rivendare achievement, and it's just like, well, like this is strat, like, do we like?
Do we really need that?
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it'll take us
And,
as
like-
toxic as, you had, in Shadowlands. F you, buddy.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope not, but like, yeah, I just kind of fall back to the like, if they're gonna put stuff in that I don't like, the only way that I want it to be in is when it came in originally. Achievements, like I was never really an achievement hunter, so
Yeah.
it's not something I really care about at all. I just don't want it to affect people negatively, so just keep it out until it's supposed to be on. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you there because I don't need that shit. Like, especially since they don't link. Like, I want to play a bunch of alts. Like, I don't want to be like, well, should I play alts or should I go uncover the entire map with BlazzinBob? Like I just
Or
don't.
get a 58 boost where you uncover the entire map already.
Oh, I have the name reserved on Alliance Whitemane. I have Boosted Bob ready for my pally. It's going to be Boosted Bob. It's going to be right there, worn on my chest. It's going to be wonderful.
Good job, Bob.
Oh, man. All right. Well, there's not much to say about that. I really don't want it either. Like, it definitely changed the game up for me like quite a bit when it came out in Wrath. It was fun during the pre-patch, but looking back on it, it's kind of like, I was excited about Dungeon Finder, and then was like, dude, whoa, this ruined everything. So,
You think you do.
and
But you
that
don't.
was something that was correct. That was something that was correct for all of us because we thought Dungeon Finder was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. We thought we did, but we didn't. We were wrong. That was the actual. Yeah, good point. All right, well, let's move on to discussion. So now let's talk about raid testing. So, dude, I don't have as much to say as Ayle. I'm excited. This is going to be kind of like the Ayle corner because Ayle got to clear it all multiple times on different ones. But we could talk about, first off here, our little experience. We got to raid with Dune who's also going to be on the show next week, so tune in for that. And we got to raid with Willie, with Josh from Countdown, and a bunch of other people. And it was a real chill, relaxed raid. Like, we were just going into Kara, and we were all doing like different things we'd never done. Josh was about to lose his mind trying to set up his buttons, and me too. To be quite honest, I was a little starstruck with everybody there, but we had a good time. But it was pretty easy to start out with. But then we got stuck on the 3 Spark. What's his name? Curator. So why don't I just give you the floor? Like, why don't you just tell us, Kara?
Yeah, like we were actually doing like very well. Like our group, surprisingly, we had. I don't think we
We
even had
had
any wipes.
we had pally tanks, by the way, too, and
Paladin
they
tanks.
were not equipped to tank with the gear we were given. Just as a prereq
Yeah,
to that.
yeah. The gear was kind of interesting on the beta. Some of the stuff wasn't really set up that well. I think like tanks were missing some stuff at the beginning, and healers like they didn't have actual any healing gear. So we didn't really know what it was going to be like heading in, and even without much organization, we actually were able to kill every boss up until Curator one shot,
Hmm.
right? With only like really minimal, just kind of like, you stand here and well, let's see how it goes,
Right.
right? And so I was a little bit disappointed. I was hoping that there would be a little bit more of a challenge to that. It was a lot of fun though. Our group was awesome. It was kind of like the all podcaster team. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Curator was
oh,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to point out that I don't think we wiped on a boss until Nightbane and Curator. It was the trash that actually threw us through a loop on different occasions. Like the trash was really throwing us through a loop, but
That was the funniest thing is the trash actually seemed to hit harder on our tanks than the bosses did, because we did lose tanks often. It seemed like because they were just getting absolutely pounded by the trash. So the bosses like seemed a little bit easy, honestly, and I would have liked the first few ones, at least the fights to be a little bit longer because we did seem to kill them pretty quickly as well. And it wasn't really until we did one attempt on Nightbane, but because we were playing with so many EU players, we only had a certain amount of time before they had to go to sleep, and we were going to go on to a different raid that we had scheduled. And so we did one attempt on Nightbane and wiped, and then we did, I think, 2 or 3 attempts on Curator, and it turns out Curator was actually bugged, and they did fix it later, but he was spawning between 1 and 3 sparks per time, which was just seemed absolutely crazy. It took us really off guard, and we didn't really have a plan for it, and that was kind of exciting. I was hoping that we would be able to get more shots at it. Later, when we went with our guild group, we were like, okay, like we have like all really serious players. Let's see how it is this time, right? We kind of know what to expect now. Let's see what we can do with it. But by that point, they'd already fixed it, and we one shot it. So that was a little sad. We were kind of
Hmm.
hoping to get that really tough experience. So um, besides that, I think we had a wipe on Nightbane. We had 2 or 3 wipes on Malchazar and one wipe on Nether Spite. So I feel like that's probably those bosses are tuned better, I would say, because like you said, it was basically like our a lot of our best players from Classic are our top team. That luckily I think a couple of them actually just got in the beta that day, so we had a really solid group in there. We still had some wipes, so I think that that bodes well for those later encounters. It was the first few that I think could use maybe a little bit, but like I don't know. When I discussed this with someone else before, they're like they like how that there was that kind of scaling difficulty in Karazhan where first bosses, they're easy, and then next one's a step up, and then a step up, and then a step up, and it kind of escalates toward the end. So there is a nice cadence for maybe like smaller guilds or newer players or things like that, where we were all extremely experienced, top end raiders.
Right.
yeah, see, for me, I got lucky because Naismith, you've heard him a couple times on Countdown to Classic, was in my chat telling me everything we need to do. He actually knew what to do on Nightbane too. I was just a little too timid in the group that we had to like speak up because I was just like, I'll just be quiet,
Come
just
on.
do my
Wow.
thing here. I mean,
No,
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I was just Sorry, I was just like, I'm happy to be in this group. I'm not going to be too vocal. I'm just going to do what I got to do. But one thing I
Ayle, you
noticed,
should be happy about this situation that happened. Let's be real. If you open the floodgates, you will regret it.
you'll have
Come on in.
another Thunder Lips on your hands right there. One thing I did notice though that I had remembered, because I did Kara in TBC, but it was like I didn't remember it at all. But I did go back and do the different achievements in Wrath, because that's what you did in off time. A lot of times in Wrath was achievement hunt, but I had forgotten how big that place is and how long of an actual raid it is, and that was actually surprising to me.
Yeah, it's very big and long. Um, yeah, no, like as for a dungeon, it's like absolutely beautiful, and just working your way through it does take a significant amount of time, right? And the cool thing about it is like just kind of like the lore of the dungeon and like the artwork and everything, and you really like you feel like you're traversing up the tower, right? And I think that's really cool. Like a lot of people consider it the best dungeon they've ever made, and definitely earlier on, like in TBC, like later on, a lot of classes get a lot of movement speed, increasing abilities, and when you're farming that stuff later on, you can really go through it, rip through it quickly. But at least for us in TBC, it is kind of like a real like dungeon crawler experience.
I will say it was kind of nice to, kind of fun to be able to show Josh the back door. That was kind of a fun thing we got to do.
Yeah, it was pretty
What
interesting.
is this?
There's a hard to find back door that I had completely forgotten about, or maybe even I never knew about it. But I remember I thought Josh was joking around with Ayle talking about the back door. I thought it was in like a funny innuendo. And I think Josh did too, but then
was.
Ayle was like, "No, there's really a back door." And we're like, "What?"
Yeah, like
Okay.
it totally whooshed me on that one because I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we can go to the back door. And then Josh was kind of like, are you sure, buddy? Like
Yeah, see,
It's really
and
what you
so
want.
Josh got lost a lot more than me, but I just knew the right people to follow. Like I was just like, I'm not losing them. And Josh was following the wrong people, I guess, and was getting lost a few different times. It was a good old time though, man.
that was funny because yeah, there are spots in there that just lead you to nowhere, actually, right? And if you go the wrong way, you can get lost. So I think it was after Nightbane in particular where he was in that like semicircle where he was going around and around, and he's just like, "Where are you guys?"
I think the funniest thing for me was when we're following you and Josh is right behind you and you turned the corner. So I didn't see you disappear, but you disappeared in front of Josh. And Josh is like, "Did you take a shortcut?" And what it was is a warlock had summoned him up, And so Josh is looking for him everywhere for the shortcut. And so am I. And we're just like,
That was fun.
what happened? And then I got summoned and I realized what happened. But yeah, they enjoyed playing the joke on Josh for a bit longer.
Yeah,
I
he was.
agree.
It
No, I
was
was
his
gonna say
first time, so he's a bit of a newbie in there. So we kind of gave him the shot in the ribs a few times, just to.
good.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
he
I
and he
crap.
and he took it well. He's always a good time. And I just had a complete blast doing it. And I thank you for the invite. But the last thing we're gonna do on Karazhan, and then it's basically the floor is gonna be yours, is do you think Karazhan is too easy? Because I think I might have a controversial opinion on this. So I want to give you a chance. Mel didn't run it, so I'll give you a chance to tell me what you think.
Yeah, I do think it's too easy. At least the first half. I would have liked to. I mean, not even that it's too easy. I just feel like a lot of the stuff happened before I could really have my fun. Almost like I would have liked either the fights to be a little bit longer or more in line with the trash because that was something about that just felt off to me that the trash we had to be more kind of on for than the bosses. So like I would have liked there to be a little bit them to be at least a little bit closer or even a little bit longer, like the boss fights. So maybe controversial. I know pretty much everybody else has disagreed with me saying that Kara is supposed to be easy, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think it was a little weird that the trash was so different, and it reminds me of North talking on Countdown to Classic about how he was talking about Classic about how the trash is really the bosses, and I had never really thought of it that way, and it kind of made me think, and it's actually made me try to perform better on trash, you know, in Classic now since I heard that, because I've always just thought of trash as trash. It's trash. Like the name is incorrect. It should be something that doesn't signify trash. Like I think trash, and I think I could go AFK. Like it's trash, and it was
Non-boss
something.
NPCs.
Yeah, it was something I had to kind of relearn and have been trying to change about myself recently, trying to actually, do a good job during those times. Because all I think about is boss, be top, boss, be top. And I've kind of learned that that's really not what it's about, especially in the speed, like speed running era. And so, but my thoughts on it is Kara supposedly was easy. I mean, I did run it in TBC and don't even remember it. Like it wasn't, right when TBC launched, but it wasn't that far after, and I don't even remember it. Like I just was there pushing buttons as a SLSL spec warlock, and not just, okay, just get me through here. I just want to get, something like it was just, it I don't think it's supposed to be hard. Like I don't think.
And did you full clear it?
I honestly don't remember. I went a couple different times, but I don't even know who the last boss is now. So I don't even know if we full cleared. You know what I mean? Like it was such a different era with pugs. Like pugs weren't in Discord. They were talking in chat, and people start to hearth. And so I hearth, and I just didn't really care to learn a lot about that back then. But what I do say is that I think the reason Classic was so popular in the beginning is because it catered to those boomers who just want to do the stuff they never were able to do. And I feel like the start of an expansion, especially in Classic, should be easy. There should be hard things, but you should be able to do quite a bit of it with ease, and I think that's what makes the game popular. If you want really hardcore stuff, there's mythic raiding in retail, and 2% of the population can do that. So I feel like it should start easy and then progress. Whereas my buddy Corpse told me last night he feels like Kara should be just a little bit harder than Nax, and I thought to myself, no fucking way. Like
why not? Why not though?
Because it's not a direct correlation. There was 300,000 guilds that are 300,000 people. I don't know. Like there was, a certain amount of people that cleared Nax, but there's a ton of people that quit in BWL, that quit in AQ, that quit at the start of Nax. Do you want to just leave them out? Do we want to just move on to the next game and just leave all those people behind? Or do we want to let them come back and try their shot at it again and have a slow ramp up? That's my point. My point is it's supposed to be easy at the start. Easier.
I get that to an extent, but you also have to remember that it's supposed to be easy at the start. And these people left mainly because they couldn't get 40 people to be on the same page, right? And Kara's not 40 people.
You're guessing there.
Okay. If you can't clear the content, it's because you can't get 40 people to be on the same page. In my opinion, I think that that's just the reality of the situation. You have 40 people that you need, 32 of them ish, to realistically do their job correctly, and you'll be fine. But my problem is that we're in a new era of gaming. And yes, there's nostalgia and, this is fun because I see it. But I don't want to be in Kara every week clearing it like we were MC and BWL. Like, I feel like the people that are going to TBC have done a lot of the stuff. And yes, there will be new people and people will come back and all of that. That's great. But your core player base wants a challenge, like at least a little bit. And I don't feel like you're going to keep them motivated by staggering all these releases and making them easy. Like if you're going to stagger the releases, at least make it slightly difficult. That was the biggest excitement about Nax, is that we didn't clear it all in one night. And I know you guys did, but we didn't. and that was exciting that we couldn't clear every boss on the first time we tried.
But if that was Molten Core at the very start, would we have kept Plague? We would have thought, oh man, we're going back to doing this, like this long ass raid times, and I don't know if it would have been as exciting. Like early on, it was exciting getting through and getting that loot, and you're ramping up, And I also say it would have been a lot different.
Ramped up?
It would have been a lot different if world buffs weren't there. Like that really trivialized a lot of the early content. Like I'm just saying, Molten Core would have still been like pretty easy without world buffs, but it would have been better. I think that having it easier at the start just gives you a chance to get people back in, and maybe they make it to the end.
Yeah, I'm okay with Karazhan being easier. I'm not advocating for it to be on a mythic level. I'm just thinking that like early on, the first few encounters, like they should be equivalent to like the trash that's near them, because like I said, we were like surprised, like we're one-shotting bosses, then the trash was like murdering our tanks, and we're just like, holy hell, what's going on here? There seemed like there was something that was off. So I would like them to fix that cadence, but.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Was that just with our first group? Because I feel like our first group was kind of scuffed with the Pally tank. Like, I mean, there was no way he was uncrushable. There's no way he was hitting the hit cap. No,
it happened. It did happen to us a couple times in the second group as well. We also had a main Pally tank.
Oh, I thought you were taking the second one.
So I was, but I was off tanking. We were having the Pally tank mainly on things. So I did get splatted a couple times, and she did get splatted a couple times as well. So like, I feel like there was something a little bit off there. But that being said, we did more raid testing than just Karazhan as well. And those other raids, they have teeth.
Do they?
And see, that's okay. So let's move on to Gruul's Lair and tell us about that, because that's what I'm cool with. Like I want to have an easy raid for everybody, and Karazhan is the coolest, funnest raid to do. Like let the casuals have it. But yeah, move on to Gruul's Lair. Tell us about that.
Yeah, everybody's going to be able to go into Karazhan and get a few bosses down and feel good at the very least, right? Like, and probably over time clear the whole thing. Gruul's was harder than Karazhan. Definitely, it was a step up, especially the first boss. There's a lot of moving parts. I don't want to say like 4 horsemen, but like there's 6 mini bosses. I think 6 bosses total, and you have to have a different person tank each one. And there's unconventional tanking. So you have a mage tanking one, you have a warlock taking control of a pet tanking one, and then we had a boomkin tanking one because that one would sheep, and boomkins are immune to sheep, right? So, and then of course, a boomkin. So that was pretty interesting. Then we had our 2 normal tanks, our main tank tanking the really hard hitting boss, and then our off tank tanking the next one, right? So. There's a lot of kind of coordination that goes on with that. The pull's like super important because you need everybody to, get a hold your unconventional tanks to get a hold of the proper mobs. And really interesting, the mage has to have a unique gear setup. They need to have over 10k HP because they actually spell steal a buff to tank the mob that gives them reduced damage taken, that they can survive that mob while tanking, right? So that's really cool. It's a really cool fight, and I heard from a lot of people that fight actually gave them more trouble than actual Gruul itself. I think they're similar in difficulty. I feel like Gruul was still a wee bit undertuned, but at least for our group, we did a pickup group, and we wiped I think 3 or 4 times getting the Malgar thing set up, and then we wiped I think another 4 or 5 times getting Gruul down. And I felt like that felt pretty good because we did have about half the raid who were really solid players and half who I didn't really know who they were. And there was like, some issues with people, but we didn't kick anybody for low damage or anything. We're like, hey, we're pugging it. We're doing it. We're just going to go. Yeah. Right. So it was, that one felt pretty good. I feel like with Gruul, there might've been a few tuning issues they still have to make with it because they did say it was going to be pre-nerf, and he wasn't using his shatter ability enough, seemingly. And when he did, the damage seemed like it was a lot less. I remember dying to that a lot more the first time I did it. So um, that being said, like this was definitely a significant step up from Karazhan, probably on like the Nightbane level of difficulty at least. So, really good guilds are going to smash it out, I'm sure, with maybe a wipe tops. But I think for average guilds, like it'll definitely take a few tries, and I think that's good.
Well, and I wonder because I'm going to do full disclosure. Again, didn't play PVE in TBC, but until this testing came out and I watched everybody doing the testing, I was under the impression that Gruul's Lair was like an Onyxia type of encounter with one boss. And I thought that both Gruul's Lair and Magtheridon was the same thing, just one boss. And it was really neat to see that it's multiple encounters and an actual raid, because I was completely wrong, and I wonder how many listeners were in the same boat, because I don't think I'm the only one that just didn't know.
I think Yip cleared that up though for us a couple episodes, quite a few episodes ago, where he clarified that there was one that was like Ani, and then another that was a full.
He might have said that, and I just missed it. It's very possible that like I miss things a lot.
I know.
Yeah, so that one is like a little bit longer, and because it offers two fights, I feel like the difficulty that Gruul should be a little bit harder than the first fight, and I think the first fight felt a little bit more challenging. I'm not sure. That might just be because we were a pug and we weren't all on Discord, so like there was some issues getting everybody coordination or on the same level for coordination, and that is a big part of that fight because you do have 6 tanks or whatever it is. So that was pretty interesting. There were quite a few groups I think did end up getting both bosses down over time, but I don't think many people one-shot it.
Did many
That's
people
awesome.
go in though with people that they were coordinated with? You know what I mean?
Yeah. There were teams who did that. Like
Okay.
those there were teams that did one-shot it, both bosses for that. I know there was like a private server team that went in. There was an apes team that went in as well and did the same. And I think like Rise and Rain had teams as well that, from when I watched, they did do it pretty easily. They're really like those are all like top level teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
And,
it was also a lot harder to get 25 people, whereas Karazhan, you can get 10 that pretty easy.
Yep.
Like right now in beta.
Yep.
That's another thing to point out. I didn't realize how packed beta was until that level 70 server opened up. And there was like a good, 1,000, 2,000 people in chat and crashing constantly.
And that was just your layer. There was multiple of those layers. Because like I had totally forgot about that. And I got invited to a group and I layered and it was the same. And I'm like, holy crap, there's actually like another 1,000 on this layer. Like, how many are there?
Dude, when you when you invited me to the Karazhan group, I was actually in Stormwind, and they gave us, we didn't even mention this, they gave us the cool no armor panther, like everybody on Alliance, the Black Panther. And I'm sitting there and there's like 40 or 50 panthers right there. And we're all checking the vendor, and then you layered me, and I saw the design change because there's so many people you can't tell, but the design changed, and I was like, holy shit, this is a different layer. And that was just Stormwind. It was nuts.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So you didn't get in to do Gruuls at all?
No, unfortunately, I had a lot to do this week with my father. Their house burnt down a little while ago, and we've been helping them. I've been helping them a lot with doing different things during the day to get things moved out in the garage so they can work on the house. So, long story short, I just didn't have time, and I did try and set up a Gruul's lair that night, and they had let Kara the night prior go on a lot longer. and so I just assumed they would do Gruul's Lair the same. So I just jumped in, started a group. We had like 10 people until someone told me it was closed. And I just was so embarrassed. I was like, sorry, guys, it's closed. I didn't know.
That's
But
nice.
everybody in the group didn't know either. So at the same time, but it just was like, it was a bummer because we had our 2 main tanks. We had Yip and we had Corpse. We would have been able to do some stuff in there. And it was just a bummer. And then I wasn't able to get into Mag the next day. But why don't you tell us about Mag?
Yeah, so Mag is tough.
Yeah?
I watched
Yeah.
Def Camp in a group. I think Crix was in it. I thought I heard his voice, but they were wiping multiple times. The raid leader was losing his mind because people couldn't interrupt, and people couldn't interrupt probably because they didn't have add-ons. But it was hilarious watching the Def Camp. Was like, I gotta go, and I was just like, oh, that looked painful. But sorry, go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think from what I've heard, less than 10 teams actually killed Magtheridon in the testing over the 6 hours or whatever it was. And the teams that did were all mostly really highly coordinated. So the Def Camp's team did. That was mainly of like private server pros. There were some other, like the Apes team did get it. There was a team that was led by like dogs, I guess. They got it. I was with my old Onslaught guild. We ended up getting it as well. It took us 20 attempts over 3 hours to do it. And like I said, it takes a lot, and it is going to be real progression for guilds, that fight for sure.
It's kind of exciting though.
Yes, it's
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah, like that was my whole point with
Love
the Karazhan thing is I think Karazhan should be easy and these other 2 should be harder. That's just my thoughts on it.
On this one, it definitely walks the razor's edge because on that fight, you need your players to do what they're supposed to do, and if they don't, it's a really great quote one of our members said in the raid was that, usually on other fights you screw up and you die. On this fight, you screw up, everybody else dies.
Kind of like
Which is interesting.
Thaddeus too,
Yeah, so that was really interesting because if you don't kick when you're supposed to, it's like an AoE shadow bolt for like 3 to 4,000, right? And that while that might not kill you, if you let 2 go off, everybody's dead, right? And
Right.
you need to have your warlocks Curse of Tonguesing them so it's slow enough that you can actually kick it, because they actually gain a stacking debuff that increases their cast as more of them die. So basically, the fight works. There's 5 mobs you kill first, and then that unlocks the boss. And those mobs do this AoE shadow bolt, and they heal. And so you have to kill all 5, and then the boss unlocks, or 2 minutes, basically, whichever happens first, right? And doing that, like that first part of the fight, it took us like I said, like 10 or 12 wipes just to get that first part figured out. And those guys also hit incredibly hard. They were blowing up our tanks. So your tank's gonna have to be well geared. We actually kind of figured out, you know what? We actually need to blow our healing cooldowns and like our heroism at the start, because we actually need that power at the beginning of the fight, which is kind of weird. You'd think you'd save that later for the boss, but like, no, we need it for the first part of the fight because this is the really hard part and we're not even getting through it, right? And so like eventually we did. It was a lot of like progression, a lot of like even like little fine tuning things where like we were learning things as we go, where we said, okay, like you 2 people kick this one, you 2 people kick that one. And then we had a couple attempts where both people kicked at the same time, and then they cast the next ability, and then we had no interrupt for it. And we're like, oh, okay, well, we can't do that. Someone has to go first, someone has to go second. And then maybe we need a backup just in case something goes wrong, right?
And it's something.
Okay, hold on, babe. Can I ask a question real fast?
Sure.
So I wasn't on the beta, so I'm trying to understand this. Or I wasn't on the raid beta. But when you clone your character to 70, are you still in your same gear that you have at 60?
They have presets for you.
Bad presets.
Okay, so they're bad presets. So how much do you think that affected being able to do the content?
Definitely did a bit, but I kind of disagree that they were that bad. I know for hunters, they were really good.
Warlocks
they were
too.
really good.
It's like that. I'll just say that mechanic the gear doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah,
But
and I know
the
for
entire thing, I
Feral
mean,
Druid,
go ahead.
yeah, the Feral Druid gear is really bad. They were getting totally blasted. So we actually had to swap away from using a Feral because the ads were just killing them. And there's nothing they could do. So we had to switch to 2 warriors and a pally tank. So that was definitely an issue. The healing power wasn't as good, but I believe it was close to what it's going to be for the first few times when people go in. And the reason I believe this is they gave you Exalted with every Outland faction. So you could go and buy all the epic gear for that, right? So for most people, that was weapons, shields, that kind of thing. People aren't going to have that off the start. You also had unlimited potions, right? Unlimited food, unlimited DPS potions, flasks, unlimited drums. Everybody was leatherworking, right? So those are like that does
That's
give
so
you an advantage.
discouraging that they did that.
I believe it's going to be closer than people think. People thought that the gear was like, no, it's crap. Like, it's not our prebis. It's awful. And like, for some classes like warrior tanks, like, yeah, it wasn't great. Warrior DPS, no, it wasn't that good. I heard Rogue said they was decent, although they didn't have really good weapon options. But like, I think it's going to be close to what it would be in the first couple weeks. Like, I believe that was a good enough test for what it was. And I think it's going to
That's
be
kind of what
fun.
I was getting at, right? Like, do you feel like that was actually a test, or do you feel like it was just undergeared people going into them?
Like I said, for the first couple weeks, I think it's going to be really close because they did give us Exalted with all the factions, and we had just infinite consumables, and everybody was min maxed out the wazoo. And everybody had ring enchants, which you didn't have to be enchanting for. So there was definitely like the power is a lot closer than people were saying. People were complaining because, oh, warrior tanks, they only have a leather belt. Like that's BS, right? But another thing to consider as well is that people also had gear from Karazhan on the tunes if they ran them before. So the group I was running with, there was people who had set pieces in, prince weapons and things like that. So like, I feel like it was decent. The gear was decent.
Yeah.
I think it was a good test.
And then after our Karazhan run, I wish I would have done it prior, but I went and got all the reps because you could just learn them instantly, and I went and got a bunch of hit gear and different gear upgrades, and then instead of doing just the gem color slots, I did everything hit, and I almost got to hit cap, which I wish I had done that prior. Would have probably helped out a lot because I was at like half hit cap or whatever when I was in that Karazhan with you guys. But what I wanted to go back to real sorry, go.
Yeah, is it another question about the boss? Because there's one more thing I wanted to touch on for that real quick.
Well, it's a question about the interrupts, or it's actually just like something that I've noticed. Now I don't know because I didn't get to do it, and I'm a lock, so I don't have an interrupt or anything in Karazhan, which I got to test. But something in Classic.
Oh, but you do.
Oh, I do. Oh, yeah, Death Coil.
The Fell Hunter is an interrupt.
Oh, yes, duh. Okay, yeah, duh. I thought you were talking about Death Coil, which is an interrupt too. I used that to stop heals a couple times in Karazhan. But what I was talking about...
Warlocks, they don't use the Fell Hunter.
Well, I mean, I definitely did in PvP. Like, it was... that was basically... Like, it was macroed. My Fell Hunter didn't click it. I did. But... about the interrupts, it's something that I notice in Classic, like say on Karazhan, when you're up to interrupt, you have the 400 millisecond batch. That means when you're coming up to interrupt, do not do anything on the GCD. So for instance, warrior, you just heroic strike until you have to interrupt, because if you do the GCD, the amount of time of the cast, you most likely won't get the kickoff if you've just done a bloodthirst. And this could be different without the batching window, but it's something so many melee just do not get. Like, do stuff that's not on GCD so that you're ready to interrupt immediately, because oftentimes you're not going to hit that batch window. It might be different, though, without the batching.
Oh, it's way different, and it's way better. It's you can interrupt at the end of cast and it goes off. I know exactly how that is because I play a warrior in Classic as well. And you're 100% right. If you use a GCD and the cast goes off at the same time, because of that 400 MS, that one if the cast is 2 seconds, a lot of times you don't get it because the GCD is 1.5 seconds, right? So
Yep.
like with this, it was similar because the cast is fast. There was a lot of times where I was holding it to actually do the interrupt. To touch on the point earlier that Mel had talked about, the thing about this, after we fixed our tanks getting blown up, it was all mechanics. It wasn't gear that was wiping us. People weren't kicking, right? People weren't banishing the summon infernals, and people weren't clicking the cubes to interrupt the boss at the right time. So this was actually irrespective of gear. Was all on the players, right?
But don't you think in some aspect that gear makes up for some of the player deficits?
Over
Because
geared, yes.
we feel that in Classic, where if you don't have geared people, you focus on the mechanics. But when you
Yeah.
do, you kind of outplay the mechanics.
And world buffs and stuff like that. Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
can't do that on Magtheridon.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It's if you have one like I said, if one person doesn't do their role, it's gonna wipe the whole raid. And
Okay.
it is extremely mechanic dependent, that fight, and it's very, very close because like I said, if people don't click on the cubes all at the same time within like a second or two, everybody wipes. Right? It's just done. It just kills everybody, right? If multiple shadow bolts get out, it kills everybody, right? So it's like people are going to have to do exactly what they're supposed to do within 2 seconds, or else everybody dies. And
that's cool.
And that's good. And people are going to learn that they have to do that, right? And so like I would like the team I was in there with throughout all of Classic was the #1 horde guild in the world, and it took us 20 tries to do it. Right?
Cool.
We had progression in there, so we still got it.
Was that cool to you? Like, did you enjoy that?
Yeah, loved it. Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Everybody in there, same thing. We were on a high, like, wow, this is like it's so different. You know, the first time we wiped, someone's like, "Oh, my buffs," you know, everybody laughs. You know, and then yeah, no, it was great. Like everybody, like we soaked it up, and like when we saw that other team, like it wasn't just us, like everybody was struggling, or like everybody was progressing on it. That also motivated us even more because it's like, yeah, no, this is an everybody thing. Like Apes, the guild that killed Ragnaros world first, 5 days after launch in Classic, they were the same. They took 20 tries as well, right?
Wow.
So it was the kind of thing where it's like there's going to be actual progression on this, and I think it's going to be big. Now those guilds, they may, I don't know if they're going to like go on their own servers and practice so they one shot it now, because that's something I know that they do as well. There we go again. I say that once per podcast. My English is horrible, forgive me. But at least for how it was tuned on the test server, it's very tight and it's going to be tough, and a lot of guilds are going to have real progression on that, which is going to be interesting because there's only one boss there. It's going to be right there for you, and it's going to take guilds 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights to do it until each person individually learns their role inside and out and can perform it.
How much trash is there up to that boss?
Not a lot. There's three packs, and you have to clear it all.
Okay.
It's kind of annoying because it's a circle basically, and there's packs all kind of around it. And so we tried killing only half of the circle and then fighting the boss, and it pulls everything. So you have to go all the way around and kill all 3 packs. It's not like the Onyxia Warders, but you can just like skip one, right?
Right.
It's you have to end up doing them all.
That's not too bad though, right? If you have to progress, at least there's not like a trillion trash before you get to the boss. But
and it does respawn after 2 hours, which we got, which was funny.
That's lovely. Question though, in Onslaught, how many bosses did you wipe on the first time you were doing them throughout all of Classic? I think the answer is 2. There is 2.
Yeah. On AQ progression, we wiped on Visitus, and then on next progression,
4 horse. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Salve Dally came on the show and told us about the whole Nax day one. It was a really good story. If anybody hasn't seen that, you should definitely check that episode out. I don't remember which one
Was there
it
any
was.
mention of the searing totem?
There was a mention of a shaman. Yes, there was, but there was no names mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically what we figured out is that the shaman used a searing totem instead of a heal, and it was that close. The tank doesn't use a cooldown, and the tank died, and then we wiped.
Oh,
So,
yeah. But how crazy is that to think that you go into TBC and hopefully there's a little bit more of a challenge? Now, again, yes, if you have to practice it on the PTR or on the private server and to get it down, that's one thing. Like that's a whole different level than I am at. And
that should count. You know what I mean? Like, if
yeah,
people are putting in all those time, so like people don't see that, and they don't know that about these guilds. So like, I don't know. This is like, I don't know if this is some sort of spoiler or whatever, or like some sort of inside info, but in our guild, we had our own server that we edited to be exactly like live that we would practice on. So when we
Right.
went and one shot everything, I mean, it looks really
it
good.
wasn't really one shot.
Yeah, it was one shot with 200 practice wipes.
Yeah, that's out now. It's been out for a while.
Right.
Salve had a little tell-all segment one time after Onslaught died, but yeah, it was definitely hush hush early on. So
Right. But I think you have to take that into account.
Yeah, I mean, it should be because, like, like Varg Flocken or whatever, you guys aren't practicing. You know what I mean? So, like, all these other guilds, they did all their practice beforehand, right? They just front loaded it in a way that when they come to live, they got all their wipes out for the most part. Where you guys are doing it in real time in the game, and it'll be the same for like I'm in Eden now, which is a lesser serious, less hardcore guild than Onslaught, right?
Right.
And like we're gonna have troubles as well. We're gonna wipe, and it's gonna be great.
It is fun.
it is. Yeah, it
As
feels
I'm
good.
wiping.
All right, well,
Not really, but
we're probably gonna have to start wrapping it up. Gonna edit that out. We're gonna start wrapping it up now. And if there's anything else you want to say before we get out of here,
Can I plug my
we're gonna
Twitch or anything?
Yeah, we're definitely gonna do that. But I was just saying about the
about the
beta.
raids. Okay, yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, I think it was a pretty good test. It was interesting that we had the 3 different tiers like that, where Karazhan, like I said, I felt it was too easy, but it was easy. We have the medium porridge with Gruul, and then we have like there's some spicy porridge coming with Magtheridon. You know what I mean? Like there's the 3 different levels that I think are gonna be really interesting. And a lot of people were really worried after the first day with Karazhan, where is everything just going to be like really easy? Is it all going to be a kind of a pushover? And we hope not, because that first phase is going to be 3-4 months, right? And if it's all that easy, I think a lot of people are going to be disinterested. But there is a little bit of hope there that some of these things are actually a little bit tough, and it's going to require people to learn and kind of get into that TBC rhythm of attempting and learning and dying, and no more owl my buffs, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, it's gonna be a little mini game. Trying, each guild's gonna have 3 Kara runs, and you're gonna be really trying not to be that 5-man out. So it's gonna be a little mini game there too. So definitely learn. Research, make sure you know exactly what you're doing, make sure you're prepared. All right, we're going to end it out with a real quick...
One last thing.
Oh, you're killing me.
Sorry, but there was somebody in chat that said that the health got nerfed from 8.3 to 4.6.
Yeah, I think that was just a nerf just to get more people downing it, so they could like get some data. I don't think that's going to actually be what happens later. But go ahead.
No, that was incorrect. The 8.6 was actually double what it was supposed to be. So when they say it was nerfed, it wasn't actually nerfed. It was actually a bug fix, because for whatever reason it was twice as much as it's supposed to be. So once they fixed that, that was the actual pre-nerf values what it's supposed to be and how it launched originally in TBC. And the Gruul value as well was the correct value for being pre-nerf. So throughout TBC, Gruul had 2 HP nerfs actually. One was 30%, and those were redacted for the testing. So redacted, or you know what I mean.
Okay.
So like his health was, because I did look it up before I went in, and I'm like, it's got to be like that 6 million or whatever, right? For Gruul, and it was. So
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So that wasn't a bug. It was just
it was a bug.
accidental. Well, yeah, it was a bug that he was higher health.
Too high.
They didn't nerf it. They just corrected it.
They just corrected it, yeah. So
Okay.
and honestly, like the fight, the second part of it, like the first part is big, and it's like that phase is actually really important. And once you kind of get into the second phase and you learn that part of it, if you get all the clicking down, like it really doesn't matter how much hit points he has, like you should be able to get it, right?
Yeah. And you guys downed him with the 4.6 million, right?
Yeah. Only one team got him with the 8, which is pretty crazy.
That's nuts.
No, that is nuts. All right, so we're going to end it out real quick with a add-on of the week. The add-on of the week this week is going to be one we've already done, Attune. Get Attuned. It is amazing. It graphically shows you everything you need to do in a nice flowchart order. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make your guild's life easier. Post it in your guild Discord. Use it because it's going to be good. All right. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at WC Reloaded. You can also follow the Mash Those Buttons Network at the Mash Network. We want you to write into us. If you want to write in something larger than what you could put on Twitter, send your emails to wcrpodcast@gmail.com. I want that Risen story, so send it. If you'd like to join the Discord, interact with the host of this show or any show on the Mash Those Buttons network, that's mash.gg/Discord. If you want to catch our live shows, they're normally Friday nights, sometimes Saturday during the day, depending on, overseas guests across the pond. But you can always follow our Twitter to know when we go live at twitch.tv/mashthosebuttons. We need your reviews, and boy, you guys killed it this last week with 4. Thank you so much. Keep them coming on iTunes or on warcraftradio.com/directory. All right. Ayle, where can we find you, brother?
You can find me live on Twitch, Ayle Gaming. I stream pretty much every day. And you can often find Bob there as well, hanging out.
I do like to hang out there. What about your Twitter too? Is it the same?
Twitter is the same. Yep. I'm kind of new to the whole Twitter game, so if that's your thing, go ahead and hit me up. I'm pretty responsive and willing to chat with anybody. So.
All right, and that's Ayle Gaming. So check it out. Google it. You'll probably find both the Twitch and the Twitter. Mel, where can we find you?
Yes, I'm going to be chatting up Ayle in Twitter because I don't use it either. So we're going to, just come to that together. No, you can find me on Twitter at Mel Overwatch.
You going to change that anytime soon? Because you don't do any more Overwatch content.
I mean, can I change it?
Yeah, you'd be like, wow, Mel, wow, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. Like, mommy, now. I feel like it's a diaper commercial at that point.
I'm a big kid now.
Yeah, I know, right? So, no, I didn't know I could change it. That's how much of a Twitter noob I am. And I've been on it for a while. You can follow me if you want. I really don't. I'm very active. You should follow me. Yeah.
And you can find me on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB. You can also find me sometimes streaming on twitch.tv/BlazzinBob. We're out of here, guys. This was an epic episode, but it was a good-ass time. And thank you so much for coming, Ayle. And thank you so much for coming, Mel. And we wish Yip a steady recovery.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.